Could the translators please do a sound check on the English channel? Thank you.
Check, check. 1, 2, 3. English channel testing for interpretation on the English channel. Testing 1, testing 2, testing 3. Testing the English line for interpretation.
Thank you. Could you please do a sound check on the French channel?
today. We're in the big room, so simultaneous interpretation is available. Could I get a roll call, please?
Councillor Brockington,
Here.
Councillor Curry,
Here.
Councillor Dudas,
Present.
Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kavanagh,
Present.
Councillor Kelly, Councillor Kitts,
Here.
Councillor Lowe,
Present.
Councillor Tierney,
Present.
Councillor Truster,
Here.
Vice Chair Gower, Chair Leeper. You have quorum.
Thank you very much. A quick note, I think both councillors Kelly and Johnson will be joining us a little bit later in the meeting. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 5.1 to 5.7 and 5.9 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who are specifically identified in the Planning Act who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on June 25th, 2025, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. I should also make note today that Marsha Wallace is here for the first time, our new general manager of the department. Marsha, welcome. Thank you for being here. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Are the minutes of our meeting 48, June 4th, 2025 confirmed? Thank you. There is one response to inquiry on the agenda, the public notification for planning applications. Going into the rest of the agenda, there is the item 5.1 zoning bylaw amendment for 5618 Hazeldean Road and 5101 Abbott Street East. That is in Stittsville. I hadn't anticipated the presentation. We don't have any delegations and we don't have any correspondence on the item. Minto had not registered to speak to the item. Did a member wish to have this one held? No. If there is anybody from Minto who wanted to address this, speak now or forever hold your peace. Oh, so you don't need to speak. Perfect. Thank you. Is that item carried? Thank you. Item 5.2 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 910 Crested Lark Way, 25 Pine Warbler Way, and part of 670 Dundonald Drive in Barrhaven West. I hadn't anticipated the presentation. We don't have any delegations and there is no correspondence on the item. Do any members wish to have that one held? And same question, if committee is willing to carry this one, did you still wish to speak? Oh, sorry, I have a different Minto on this one. Nope. Is this item carried? Thank you. The zoning bylaw amendment for 3990 and 4000 Old Richmond Road, 572 Moody Drive. We don't have any delegations. We had received a bit of correspondence on that one. I know Councillor Johnson was keen to just make some brief comment on that one. If I could get the committee's indulgence to hold that one until she's available to do that, that would be great. Thank you. The item at 640 Compass Street, we don't have any delegations. There was no correspondence. Did any members wish to have this one held? No. Sorry, I should take a look around. To the applicants with Richcraft and Foten, if committee's prepared to carry this, did you still wish to speak? Thank you. Is this one carried? Thank you. The zoning bylaw amendment at 73, 79, and 83 St. Cecil. I am supportive, but I do have some questions on that one, so I'm going to hold that one. For these OP and zoning bylaw amendment at 930, 1010, and 1030 Somerset Street, we do have a presentation there, and there are delegations, so we'll hold that one. For the zoning bylaw amendment at 254 Argyle, we don't have any delegations. There was some correspondence received. I hadn't anticipated a presentation. Do members want that one held? I don't see anyone asking for it to be held. To the applicants, if committee is prepared to carry this, do you still wish to speak? Thank you. Is the zoning bylaw amendment to 254 Argyle carried? And is the application for alterations for 254 under the Ontario Heritage Act carried? Thank you. There is the zoning bylaw amendment for 3930 Riverside Drive. There is a presentation. We have delegations and we have received correspondence, so we'll hold that one. There is the official plan monitoring report 2023 update along with the 2023 annual development report. They've been combined together into a single presentation. We do have one delegation on that item, so we'll hold it. And then we'll get just a quick note that there is a motion that we had been previously given on Pearlie and Rideau Veterans Health Center development charges extension. Oh, that was withdrawn. So that's no longer on the agenda. Sorry, oh, the provincial law change. Yeah, we thought that might. Okay. Great. Okay, back to the top of the agenda. Thank you very much, everyone. So the first item held is, that is not Councillor Johnson, 640 Compass. Oh, no, that was carried. 73, 79, and 83 Saint Cecil. Thank you very much. Good morning, guys. So on this one, we are about to approve a rezoning that would put additional height on a mid-block development in the R4UA zone, if I'm not mistaken. I am interested on your view as to whether if a similar application were made for additional height in the R4UB or the R4UD, both of which are zones that I've got a significant amount of in Kitchissippi Ward, would you have the same amenability to adding that height or recommending approval of that height?
Thank you, Councillor. Every planning application is looked at under its own merit, so it's difficult to say whether or not we'd be looking favorably at an increase in height in other zones, because it all depends on the specific context. In this particular case, we're looking at a site that it's in close proximity to Beechwood Avenue, which is a Main Street corridor. It's a stone's throw away from an evolving neighborhood, and the site can otherwise accommodate the proposed density on site. And for that reason, staff found it that in this case, it was appropriate to consider the additional height for the proposed building.
If I'm not wrong, I think this brings it from what would be sort of 3 stories to 4 stories, correct?
Councillor, the maximum height is 11 meters and the proposed height is 14.5 meters. So that's 13.5 meters. Thank you. That's an increase of 2.5 meters. So yes, 11 meters would typically see
half basement and 2 stories on top.
Correct.
Okay. I know I'm going to want to speak to the staff who are doing the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, because there are a number of areas where we are proposing caps of say 3 stories on buildings. And if an application like this were to move forward in, like I say, some of the R4U, B and D, and if staff may be amenable to recommending approval of it, then I want to understand whether or not the zoning bylaw should start off with a cap that may not be defensible moving forward.
Chair, if I may speak to the comprehensive zoning bylaw. As we're going through, we will continue to see site-specific applications on an ongoing basis, even after the zoning bylaw is approved. And the notion of us introducing a height limit in the zoning bylaw that gives as of right permissions at 11 meters, doesn't predicate nor preclude the opportunity for people to come in for site-specific applications.
I'm just not sure when it comes to infill height. There has been an expectation that developers will adhere to infill heights. We've seen lots of variances all the time at the Committee of Adjustment on things like lot width and lot area and setbacks, et cetera. But height has been generally defended both by this council and by the Committee of Adjustment. So I think the rationale that you've put forward today is a good one, but I want to make sure that we're being really clear with residents as to whether the comprehensive zoning bylaw will mean what it says, because that's a major point of the exercise, is to give people a little bit more certainty for the next decade or so. So I'll leave it at that. Are there any further questions on this one? Is this item carried? Carried. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Moving on is the application at 930, 1010, and 1030 Somerset Street. Give staff an opportunity to come up.
Chair, I will have a motion and possibly a direction, but I'm still waiting for information from staff.
Okay.
So perhaps I could introduce those after the presentation or after the delegations if necessary.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
For
you.
sure.
I know typically I would submit them now, but there's still some
That's right.
ironing happening.
Okay, so for the first item here, we'll get a presentation from staff. We'll move into our public delegations, of which there are several, and then we'll move into questions of staff. And somewhere between now and when we vote, it's anticipated that Councillor Troster will have both a motion and a direction with respect to this item. Erin, we're in your hands.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. My name is Erin O'Connell. I'm the planner who's been working on this site from a development review perspective, along with my colleague Soleil. Next slide. So the site, it's colloquially known as 1010 Somerset. It's located on the southwest corner of Somerset Street in Preston. It's 4.5 hectares. The lands at 930 Somerset Street on the corner are currently occupied by the Plant Bath Recreation Center and Plouffe Park. And the lands at 1010 and 1030 Somerset Street are currently vacant. Next slide. These are some photos from Somerset Street. So the top left showing the driveway access to the Plant Bath from Somerset Street. The bottom showing from the Somerset Bridge approaching the site, which is on the right. And the top right is the site located, the vacant portion of the site. In the background, you can see the Gladstone Village redevelopment that's underway. Next slide. Couple more photos of the surrounding site, the Plant Bath from the corner of Preston and Somerset Street in the top left. And the bottom is the access, the multi-use pathway access off of Preston Street. And the top right is from the Preston Street, that's Oak Street. And so the Plouffe Park is located on the right of the site. And you can see Gladstone Village again in the background. Next slide. Some background on the site. The property was acquired by the City of Ottawa in 2022. At that point, a concept plan was developed. Public engagement occurred in several phases over the next few years and ultimately resulted in a preferred concept plan that accommodated a recreation center expansion, cultural facilities, new park, a new school, housing, and a district energy component. The priority for staff right now is the new school that's been identified as an urgent need. And in December 2024, councilors may recall that council approved a concept plan in principle and directed staff to pursue amendments. And so these amendments are what's before you today. Next slide. So this is the zoning schedule map that's before you today. We'll start with the zoning. What we're doing here is one of the things is removing a floor space index from the mixed use zone. It was there at first to reflect a temporary restriction on density that was on the site until the parkland had been identified. And that's what's happening through this associated plan and processes. So we've removed that FSI. We've also changed some mixed use zones to leisure for the new parkland. So that's area B on the slide up there is the portion of the site that's changing from mixed use to a parkland or leisure zone. And we've put an exception in the leisure zone for the park to provide clarity in terms of the future zoning on the site frontage and some flexibility for the future recreation center. So next slide. This is one of the schedules that's changing from the secondary plan, that's Schedule L. We're changing several. Amendments to the secondary plan, this is the West Downtown Core secondary plan, are largely to change the boundaries of the land uses and to permit some height for the proposed school that'll be located there. There's some text adjustments to the secondary plan that are to permit a rec center with a minimum height less than 5 stories. The original secondary plan had a minimum height established, and I can get into that in more detail if it's required. The secondary plan requires also that non-residential active frontages exist along Somerset Street for new development. And we've amended that to provide some flexibility in consultation with our affordable housing providers that are anticipated for a portion there that have had some challenges with that provision. We've also included an amendment to permit a limited access laneway for the school site, and that'll go from Somerset Street through to the new Oak Street. Next steps, or next slide, which includes next steps. So the next steps in terms of this project are we anticipate to receive the site plan for the school site specifically. Then staff will be advancing the park and recreation facility. There is a functional design underway right now for Oak Street to see about accommodating an additional sidewalk, and the market and affordable housing components will progress as well. And that concludes the presentation from staff.
Thank you very much, Ms. O'Connell. Short and sweet. We'll move into public delegations at this point. I would ask whether the applicant team wants to respond. You'll only have 5 minutes, so I want to ask whether you want to respond to what you hear during public delegations or start off with your own presentation. Okay, I leave it up to you, but I think it would be helpful just to listen in on what the public delegations have to say and respond to any specific concerns that you might want to there, and make use of the slides that you have through the course of doing that. So in that case, we'll move to the public delegations. The first of whom is Catherine Boucher with Dalhousie Community Association. I don't know if Catherine is online or if she's here. I believe Clerks is looking to bring them in. She's not online? Okay. Okay, we do want to hear from Catherine as always, so she's going to be alerted to the fact that her spot is up, and we'll move in the meantime to David Seaborn, who will be followed by Carol Sissons.
Okay.
Good morning, David. We can hear you.
Okay. You received a letter from us. I'm with the Dalhousie Community Association. I'm their planning and development coordinator. You received a letter from us from P4X, which includes the Dalhousie Community Association, the Hintonburg Community Association, the Recreation Association of Hintonburg, and the Plant Pool Recreation Association, which got together to discuss this with City. So we've got 3 items that we're asking you not to approve. First has to do with parking. The secondary plan vision statement is to expand and promote active transportation and to support use of transit and active transportation. There's really no rationale for any surface parking. Gladstone Village is adhering to this vision. We have 2 transit lines nearby. We have bus routes going by. We have the multi-use pathway on the beside the Trillium O train. And the existing secondary plan is clear, and it says surface parking should not be allowed. The very scarcest of resources in the inner city is land, and to use it, to squander it for parking is a poor decision. Jack Purcell Community Center and the Elgin Street Public School, they're downtown. They have no surface parking, so we're not sure why we can't do that here. It may not be quite as dense yet as Elgin Street, but it will be soon. The second thing has to do with heights along Somerset. Page 7 of the staff report says that the policy intention for a mid-rise built form will still be met given the likely high ceiling heights of the facility. The rear of the building, the rec building, has 3 gyms on the second floor, which are 2-story height. So that's a total of 3 floors. That's a long way from 9 stories of a mid-rise, and an even longer way from the 18-story indicated in Schedule M of the secondary plan. Likely to be met is not a planning rationale. Is this really good enough? Land, as I said before, is the scarcest of resources. Are we squandering the land's potential? And the third thing we'd like you to not approve is the Main Street animation. The previous concept plan was criticized by the planning department because the buildings were not close to Somerset Street and providing no active Main Street animation. The present concept plan has revised this to put the buildings up there, and now we're asked to not have street animation. It's a bit of a wasteland between Chinatown and Hindenburg, and we don't want it to stay that way. Is affordable housing any less likely to need at-grade active frontage than any other kind of housing? Are we proposing a second-class development for affordable housing? So I urge you all to withhold your approval of the 3 articles in Part B, items 5A, 2D, and 2C. None of this will delay the proceeding with affordable housing, nor with the construction of the school. Thank you.
David, thank you very much. I'm looking to see if there are any questions. Councillor Troster.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for being here. I just wanted to let you know that I will have some specific questions to staff about the items that you raised. My understanding is that some of it is actually contained in the language in the existing OPA and zoning, but it's a little bit buried. And I will have both a direction to staff on the parking piece and a motion on the road, on the bus lane. But I'm being told by staff that the direction on the parking may actually have to go to council and not to committee because it intersects with site plan. But just to let you know, there will be further discussion about this as we progress today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Are there any further questions of this delegate? I don't see any. In that case, we're going to go to Carol Sissons. I'm sorry if I've gotten that last name wrong, at which point we'll come back to Catherine Boucher. Carol, the floor is yours. She's Carol, I think I'm being told you need to unmute yourself. Carol,
Okay,
we're going to come back to you. Oh, now we can hear you.
Great. Sorry for that.
No worries. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee whenever you're ready.
Well, I just want to re-emphasize those 3 points that were made, particularly the parking. I know that it's an ongoing issue, has been for 20 years on part of the site that is developed. Adding a few more spaces is not going to solve the problem. It will just make it worse. It is very inequitable to allow a few people to have surface parking and the rest need to park on the street. It's quite possible to park on the streets. We being the community have done constant checks over the 20 years and always find parking spots on the street and available. People just find it unfair that a few privileged people get the spots on the surface parking right at the building and the rest have to use the streets. But often the street parking is not further than the far end of a big lot in a suburban recreation center. There seems to be absolutely no justification for increasing parking just to increase the problems of inequality. I really find that a very strange way to use, as the previous speaker said, very scarce resources, the land. So I really would urge the committee and council to think very seriously about allowing any surface parking in this development. I also support the other two motions. We really desperately want to embrace the new high density that we're going to have in the area. We want people walking. We want people enjoying the environment. We don't want them walking along a block or two of Somerset that has nothing on it for them. And we want this to be the center of the connection between Hintonburg and Chinatown. So we really do want animation along that street. We want density, we want animation, and it by not requiring it for some residences and requiring it for other residential buildings, it just makes two-class citizens, and it's not fair. So I really hope that council takes seriously the arguments that have been raised by the previous speaker. I think that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Hi, Carol. Thanks for being here. For folks who didn't know, Carol was part of the original group of residents that fought hard to save Plant Bath when the city was going to sell it off. And now it is, I think, has the second highest enrollment of any pool in the city and is a thriving center. And now we will be expanding the recreation there. Carol, I just have a question about what you're asking for on the parking piece. Are you looking for no expansion of private parking, or are you looking for an elimination of those spots that are currently in front of the pool?
Well, I mean, there will obviously have to be accessible parking and drop-off parking. But some of the current concept plans I've seen have suddenly increased the parking from 40 spots, the side parking on the side of the building, from 40 spots to 60 spots. And those 60 spots are on top of a basketball court and a volleyball court. Now, how can anyone justify putting parking for people who are rushing in to do a indoor activity over a basketball court, which kids use all the time? So the number one priority is not to increase surface parking at all. Number two priority would be, since it's such a problem for the staff, those few 40 spaces, would be to get rid of those and then make it equitable for everyone. But I understand that can't probably be done until the underground parking is in place. But there just seems no justification for adding more parking on the existing 930 lot.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. And you won't see it at this committee, you're going to see it at council, but I will have it. This is because it interacts with site plan, but I have discussed this with staff. I'm going to ask them some questions too when delegations are done. And the direction is asking any additional parking to be limited to accessible parking or delivery drop-off spots. I don't have the language in front of me because the staff is still looking at it, but just so you know, my office took that concern quite seriously. And we're really committed to not seeing an expansion of surface parking on the site, because I agree with you that it's a very bad use of land. Although there will have to be some parking on a temporary basis as this is staged out, you know, when the school is built and there's no underground parking yet and all of those pieces, as you mentioned. But the intention is no expansion of parking other than for accessible spots and maybe a couple other minor uses on an ongoing basis. So thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you very much, Carol. I don't see any further questions for you. Thank you very much for your presentation today. We're going to move back to Catherine Boucher, who is now able to join us online.
Bonjour. Am I here?
Good morning, Catherine. We
Jeff.
can hear you.
Okay. Well, I was supposed to be the first speaker, but through my own glitch, I'm the third speaker. However, I'm hoping to be third time lucky because I'm probably just going to ask for the same things that Dave and Carol asked for. My name is Catherine Boucher. I'm here as president of the Dalhousie Community Association, which includes Little Italy, Chinatown, and LeBreton Flats. We're one of the members of P4X, a coalition representing interests of residents in the western part of Somerset Ward, as well as in Hintonburg. This site is at the intersection of two LRT lines. It's a 2-minute walk to the Bayview station and therefore a target of the highest intensification. This is as it should be, but as we prepare to welcome thousands of new residents, we must ask where these neighbors will play outdoors or even just sit under a tree. We are the area most deficient in green space and with the lowest tree population of any ward in Ottawa-Gatineau. We have an opportunity here to provide some additional green space, and this is where our comments come from. We know we have been promised a 1-hectare park, but can we ask our city to be bold and try for more? Opportunities for downtown residents to have access to parks and outdoor play are 1 in a million, and this is one. If our suggestions are approved, we can open up the park area to Somerset Street and invite the public into this space. We have 3 asks as outlined in a letter I think we sent yesterday. One, as Carol and David mentioned, is to remove surface parking. The secondary plan was clear on this, and the current proposal actually adds surface parking, taking away potential green space. There will be tons of underground parking under the new rec center, and as I said, we're 2 minutes to Bayview and served by lots of buses on Preston and Somerset. Our second ask, and this may be a bit bolder, is to move the mid-rise building atop the rec and cultural center. The city should not build a low-rise, one-use building on such a significant street. The secondary plan allows for up to 18 stories, so why not partner with a local nonprofit housing builder and use valuable land for a joint project? Third, ensure that the frontage on Somerset is animated throughout. There's no real rationale to exempt one developer from adding to the vitality of the block. Nonprofit housing providers have built and managed commercial uses. And if the mid-rise is moved atop the rec center, of course, this request will be moot. I thank you for your attention, and I ask you to be bold and help our community get closer to achieving equity with the rest of Ottawa. Merci.
Hi, Catherine. This is just a thank you and to let you know, pretty soon we'll be moving on to questions to staff, and I'll be presenting my motion, which also addresses one of your concerns, which I'm not sure if it was in the letter, but related to the road, to the access road on the site. And I have some clarification questions about the commercial that you mentioned and also the height piece. And there will be a direction to staff on the parking, but as I mentioned, it'll go to council, not to committee. So, but thank you so much. I take all of your concerns really seriously. And just so you know, Catherine and the Dalhousie Community Association have been very intimately involved in this process for a very long time and are real guardians of the community and of this site, along with P4X. Thanks so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Catherine, I don't see any further questions for you. Thank you very much for your presentation today. We're going to move on to Brigitte Leblanc, who will be followed by Marie-Camille Lalande.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et au comité.
Thank you,
de
Mr.
notre
Chair, and thank you to the committee to be able to speak to you today. I believe that there is a presentation that will be posted.
Oui, je crois qu'ils sont presque prêts.
I believe that we are almost ready for that. Yes, thank you.
Alors, je m'appelle Brigitte Leblanc-Lapointe.
My name is Brigitte Leblanc-Lapointe, and I'm the parent of two children at the Louise Arbour School. I'm a resident of the Kitchissippi, and I am a taxpayer of Ottawa. I recognize that the personnel's efforts that have led to us to this point. You all know that there has been a very important path to this project. I'm here today to once again highlight the urgent need of this project for the community. Next slide, please. The Louise Arbour School opened its doors in 2017-2018 as a temporary school in the old St. Mary's School while waiting for the opening of a new school. When it opened, there were 129 children, and its capacity was up to 200 students. This last school year, there were 350 students, a huge increase. The Louise Arbour School is completely at its max. Next slide, please. To be able to meet this need, today there are 7 portables in the lot. The gym and the music room and the library are all on the exterior of the main building. Next slide, please. So I'd like to remind you the current state now at the Louise Arbour School, so that we could highlight the urgent need of the construction of this new school. Next year, we anticipate adding an 8th portable, which in an area that is already very full. There's no ventilation system. There is no gym. The staircases are overflow storage space, which means that there is a huge risk if there is ever a fire. There are about 8 toilet stalls rather, and 4 urinals in the annex for 350 students, and no bathrooms in the portables. The infrastructure of the school is underdeveloped, and there's only 1 basketball net. Next slide, please. Here you've got the chronology of all of the steps throughout this project. Our students are waiting for this school for some time now. It has been 3 years that funding has been in place for this new school, and I am very grateful with the progress that has occurred since December. Next slide, please. Yesterday, the first cohort of students who began their kindergarten in 2017 have graduated from the Louise Arbour School. It is an overpopulated school and not adequate. It is essential that the new school opens its doors between 2020 and 2027. Next slide. Here you've got a picture of the importance of bus transportation. The Francophone population in Ottawa is less concentrated than the Anglophone population. Here you see all of the Anglophone schools that you can find in our zone, and the only elementary school is Louise Arbour. So the students at Louise Arbour often have to cover much more of a land mass than their English counterparts. Therefore, this is very necessary to ensure Louise Arbour becomes accessible to this community. Next slide. So the main points.
To be an emotional issue for me, and I'm striving to be constructive and respectful. It is with difficulty that I read comments to the committee along the lines of, if our children need buses, the school should be built elsewhere. There has to be no NIMBYism that is more shameful than a group opposing the construction of a desperately needed school. I find this offensive, and as a taxpayer, My expectation is that the committee and council will give appropriate consideration of the relevant interests, and I believe that the current plan and motion achieve that. My expectation and really my plea is that the committee recommend and the city approve the resolutions before you today on this item. Further, I urge the city to move as expeditiously as possible with this project and to continue to collaborate with the CPO on the various work streams that will need action over the next 2 years. This project has been marred by various delays, and at this point, there is a generation of students whose elementary school experience will have been plagued by inadequate facilities.
Brigitte, désolé, mais c'est tout le temps.
I'm sorry, but that's all the time you have. Very well, thank you.
Et, cherche s'il y a des questions.
Are there any questions?
Non. Alors,
No
merci,
questions.
beaucoup pour, votre
Thank you very much for your presentation today.
We'll move on to the final public delegation, Marie-Camille Lalande. Bonjour, quand vous êtes prêt, vous avez 5 minutes pour.
Good morning. When you're ready, you have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Bonjour, merci.
Good morning. Thank you.
Perfect timing. I got here by bike. It's a little hot outside. Tout d'abord, merci au comité de l'urbanisme et du logement.
Thank you very much for the Planning and Housing Committee to give me this opportunity to talk us about some questions about the new elementary school, Louise Arbour. Thank you to the committee members for welcoming us today. My name is Marie-Camille Lalande, and I'm a parent of 2 children who go to the school. I am a proud resident of Ottawa Centre, and also am a taxpayer at the City of Ottawa. I support Madame Lablande-Leplan's points when it comes to the urgency of building the new school, and I would like to speak more specifically today of buses. I understand that for there are certain residents, Anglophone residents, it may seem natural that a urban school be accessible by public transit, by scooter or bike, and then others are reserved for buses. However, when we look at the zone of the school, and I think you've seen that earlier, it covers a territory that is huge. We've got the river on the north, you've got the west, and you've got the experimental farm baseline in the southern part, and Island Park Fisher on the western part. In that zone, it covers about 350 students and an equivalent of 12 Anglophone schools that serve that same area.
Anglophone children who attend one of those 12 schools in the same area can very easily get to their neighborhood school by foot or bus, or or by scooter or bike. However, it is inconceivable in our eyes that 300 children would walk to school or bike to school or scoot to school in a comparable area. For instance, if I take my own family as an example, ça n'est pas notre cas.
That is not our case. In the current estate, it is impossible for my children and myself to go by foot or on bike to school. Without a bus, I would have to be forced to drive my students to school and to pick them up at the end of the day by car every afternoon. And that would be the same for about 75 households.
At this point becomes, is it better to have 3 buses twice a day or about 50 to 75 individual vehicles dropping their children off each morning and picking their children up each day? In my mind, the math is simple. I don't think 75 individual vehicles circulating around the school is a better option to 3 buses that spend about 10 minutes each morning and each afternoon.
And this goes without talking about the households who have no vehicles, as some people depend on buses because the children wouldn't be able to get to school otherwise. I don't believe that it is right to ask a child who's in kindergarten, a 4-year-old, to walk 30 to 40 minutes under a hard snow or rain to get to Champlain Park with their backpack and all of the other things that they need to get to school.
With a child in any temperature will know that asking a child to walk 3 kilometers there and 3 kilometers back is a huge ask. And so since not everyone has access to cars, I think making car ownership a mandatory requirement to attending school is a little ludicrous. However, removing bus access to the school would essentially equate to making car ownership a mandatory requirement to attend school. And that would be the case for some of our Louise Arbour families who would otherwise have to choose another school. We recognize and truly respect all of the efforts that have been made this far to preserve as much green space as we can in this urban lot. Our children will be the first to benefit from all this hard work. And we look forward to continuing this work with all of the stakeholders to teach our kids the role that parks and trees play in a thriving community. And we invite you to continue that work with us in the new, appropriate, and fair school that our children deserve, no later than September 2027. Thank you for your support. Merci beaucoup.
Hi, thanks for being here. I just want to clarify, there's no move to remove the bus lane.
There's been questions about the utility of bus lanes and whether they encroach on an existing or potential park space is what we've understood from the report.
Sure, yeah, there's people who weren't happy about it, but it's not leaving the plan. The motion that I have is it's just clarifying that it's only for bus drop-off access, because we don't want it to be a through lane road through the park. But just to be clear,
wonderful.
There's no motion to remove the lane, and we really do understand that. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And Councillor Troster, on that note.
If I could have it up on the screen, because it's fresh off the presses. It says, whereas in 2021, 4 community groups, Dalhousie Community Association, Hintonburg Community Association, Plant Pool Recreation Association, and the Recreation Association of Hintonburg formed a coalition called P4X. And whereas school bus access to the site is necessary for safe and orderly arrivals and departures for students at the school. And whereas limiting access by private vehicles and ensuring a one-way operation of the school bus laneway will contribute to safe streets and prioritize pedestrian and cyclist movement over cars. Therefore, be it resolved that the West Downtown Core Secondary Plan, Chapter 3, Section 5.2 be amended as follows. Add the following after the last sentence of Policy 6, quote, a laneway will be permitted to provide access exclusively for school buses, emergency vehicles, and mobility access to a school. School buses will be permitted to access the lane in a southbound direction only. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Those were the public delegations we've had. The clerk has provided me with some clarity with respect to the applicants who are in the room. So we will have 2 different presentations. The first will be from Annie Dugas and Christine McQuaig from the CIPEO and Q9, who will then be followed by the applicant team, Eric Bays and Réal Labelle with Stantec and Hoven. So Annie and Christine, if you want to take 5 minutes now, you can make a presentation to the committee. Oh, and I think we'll just get you over here. If staff could just help the delegate navigate. Annie, bonjour. Quand vous êtes prête, vous avez 5 minutes pour.
When you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes for your presentation. Good morning to you all. Thank you, councillors, members of the committee. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Annie Dugas. For public schools in Ontario, it is a pleasure, first off, to be here to recognize all of the work that goes behind the project that is in the works now. We have heard many comments from the community and from parents of the school. These are all comments that we take seriously and that we think about in the development of the plan for the future plan. We want it to be an adequate space so that it takes into account the community's needs and to maximize green spaces and access to a community. The school is much more than a learning place. It is a pillar of a community. So I'd like to recognize all of the work that goes behind this and the collaboration that we have with the staff at the city on this project. We are listening so that we can come to a solution that is the most optimal as possible with the entirety of the community. I believe that what has been presented before you today is the result of all the hard work from many members and from consultations and considerations. So we have heard this urgency of this school. The current state has certain limitations, but offers the best education possible in the current context. We do expect an opening in the quickest time, and we expect a continued collaboration of all members and players. On that point, I have nothing else to present to you today, otherwise than to recognize the work, the commitment of all parties, which is undeniable. And we are very pleased to see that this project is moving into the next steps and that we'll be able to begin the construction in the quickest time so we can open the school. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Merci. Je cherche
Thank you.
des questions.
Are there any questions?
Je ne crois pas.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Alors, merci pour le
Very well. Thank you very much for your presentation.
So our final delegates will be Eric and Réal from Stantec and Hoban. Good morning to both. No, it's okay. Eric, whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can just hold a moment until the presentation comes up. Firstly, my name is Eric Bays. I'm a senior urban planner with Stantec Consultant. We've been retained by the city to help work with the nuts and bolts of this amendment to this official plan and the zoning bylaw. I'm going to cut this a bit short because I think I want to have more opportunity to try and answer some questions. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this concept plan, I believe everyone here today has seen this before. This was the concept plan that was recommended for approval by Finance and Corporate Services Committee on December 3rd, 2024. It then went to Council for their adoption. And it has these fundamental components that we've been talking about today and that we've considered in the zoning. There's the market rate housing in the northwest corner, market and affordable housing. There's a recreational facility expansion that's proposed, the school site, and the additional new 1 hectare park as well. If you can flip 2 slides ahead, please. So this is the most recent iteration of the concept. It's dated June 9th, and to save committee the effort of trying to spot the difference, I've put some red arrows that identifies the highlights. These changes are on the basis of feedback from Urban Design Review Panel, technical review by city staff, as we've assembled the applications, submitted various technical studies. The one at the top left is ensuring to maintain the multi-use pathway connection from the Trillium pathway up to Somerset West. The one just to the right of that along Somerset is ensuring that there's some type of pedestrian staircase connection from the City Center Avenue underpass up to Somerset. The one by the school is recognizing that the design of the school has evolved over this time, and that this now reflects the most recent version or iteration of the school design. And then finally, the lowermost arrow is recognizing that there is an intent in the secondary plan to have an active transportation link from that underpass to the corner of Oak Street. And so fundamentally, though, the vast majority of this is the same. It's the same combination of uses, the same general built form that committee and council adopted at the end of last year. Next slide, please. In terms of the zoning, or the official plan amendments, I've put forward there what the actual intent or the vision is for the area at the top of the page. And that's really what the guiding principle is under this concept, despite the minor adjustments we're proposing to the secondary plan. We worked with Hoban and the other stakeholders in this to try and create this combination of uses on the site that, while it may not quite meet the needs or the interests of any individual stakeholder, I think it's a good compromise that balances those different needs and helps to build a framework that each one of these phases, which will come forward on their own, but still cohere to this individual plan in a manner that's going to work for the different stakeholders and create an integrated space. So this lists the intent of some of those amendments. There's been quite a bit of talk about them to date. I just wanted to speak really quickly related to the item of parking. Certainly no concern with the feedback from the project leadership about the adjustment to policy, the motion that's being put forward to try and reduce and limit surface parking on the site. There was concern that was raised related to the removal of the basketball area and some play area. Partially that there is parking that's showed on the current concept plan. The concept plan, each one of these stages is there is more opportunity for refinement. There will need to be more refinement as each one of these pieces comes forward. So I expect that conversation is going to continue. The other component, though, is once the recreational facility is constructed, there's going to be a need to have buses that are accessing the school to get from Somerset through that area and then out to Oak Street. And that drive aisle would still be necessary even with the removal of the parking there. And the final item, Mr. Chair, I'd like to highlight is for the recreational facility, there is a permitted maximum height there, both in the secondary plan and in the zoning of up to 30 meters, which considering average heights for residential use of 3 meters per floor, it's approximately 9 to 10 stories. And at that, happy to take any questions.
Hi, thanks so much for being here. Do you mind adjusting your screen in front of you? Because we can only see your neck on the camera. Oh. Okay, there we go. Now we can see your face. Just for the people who are watching at home. Okay, so I do have a number of questions. So you're saying that this issue of parking potentially going on the existing basketball court is not a for sure?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if Mr. Suchin might be in a better position to talk about the next phases of the project.
I mean, I understand temporarily if we have to stage parking, but I'm just saying in the long term, we're not talking about turning a basketball court into a parking lot, correct?
Correct. As the bus lane gets to its final state, there will be the elimination of the half basketball court that is there, but the existing basketball court will remain. That's just to enable the buses to come on and off of Somerset and then make the corner to get down to the school site.
Okay, but there's a possibility because we haven't planned what the park's going to look like yet. So there could be more basketball in the new park.
Possibly.
If that's what people want. Okay.
We'll be doing the needs analysis and more public engagement coming up during the rest of this year and into early next year to determine exactly how the park would be laid out.
Okay. Now, my understanding is the way this OPA and zoning is written gives some flexibility in terms of the frontage, specifically for the affordable housing, although I know that in my neighborhood, CCOC has a lot of commercial downstairs in some of their nonprofit buildings. Is there a reason why it isn't required to have commercial?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. This is something that we had a discussion about here, and there was some adjustment to the policy as it was initially proposed versus what you see in front of you today. So the original one spoke to a certain proportion of the site being affordable housing, and then that would be the bar for unlocking consideration of not having active commercial uses at grade. The adjustment has now been, I would argue, narrowed down, and the requirement where the city would even consider that is when it is a project where there's a contribution agreement from the city. The other thing, so there's nothing in the zoning, the MC zone that's proposed to be put down that would limit or prohibit that at grade retail. And each one of these sites is going to need to go through the site plan control process. It will be in front of Urban Design Review Panel. It will be reviewed by staff as well. It'll also come to your office as well for comment and feedback. I think there's a lot of opportunities going forward for staff and for those on this committee to ask those hard questions of whomever ends up coming forward with this proposal to go, Can you give me a business case for why this isn't possible? The way that it's written right now, Mr. Chair, is that there's no opportunity for flexibility. And I think one of the challenges that has come up in a lot of affordable housing projects is that there's a lot of different criteria for many levels of government. And when you combine them together, it can really have an impact on what the bottom line is and the viability of it. So this policy has been adjusted in an attempt to try and create a bit more flexibility, but it doesn't completely remove the need for accountability for each project.
So you're saying retail is not being required, but it's also not prohibited. You're saying it's still entirely possible to have ground floor retail in the community housing building.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's exactly what the intent is.
One more question. The community association is really interested in the idea of maybe having housing above the rec center to help preserve land and the opportunity for more green space. The way that this OPA is written and this zoning, would it allow for that potentially?
I see my colleague, Mr. Weary, making his way to the microphone. He's best to answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, could I answer the question regarding whether it's possible from a zoning and official plan perspective? And then
Sure,
Kevin
and
can
actually, I
speak
just
to-
wanted to quickly ask Robin and Kevin. You're not in the seats as like the staff or the planning department. Some folks will recognize you on YouTube, so it's a complicated relationship on this one since I think the city is the proponent. Could you just explain your role in this and introduce yourselves?
Yes, we are following procedures as if we are the developer. We are here not as the city, we are here as an outside organization applying to change the zoning, following the rules of the Planning Act. And that's why we hired Mr. Baines to do the work. We followed the process and we were scrutinized by planning and followed the process.
And thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So RCFS is often the applicant when it comes to new facilities in the city, whether it's this one or a new rec complex out in the south. Anything that involves new construction, we are the applicant, so the developer in that case, but we also represent the city interests. So in this case, for instance, on this file, I have a park planner assigned as internal as the representing the development side, but then there's also a park planner assigned that is completely separate and professionally obliged to respond on behalf of the city's responsibilities versus us as a developer's responsibilities.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I think there's a question with respect to putting housing above the rec center, and then we'll come back to the question about the uses at grade.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Tronster. Development above a large span structure is technically possible, but it is certainly prohibitively expensive. And may I point to this room that you're in right now? Below, there's a parking garage with several columns in it. And that is to support the weight of this room that we are in. And indeed, this room has a large span, but it also has columns giving restricted views. Now imagine gymnasiums. In particular, this is a 3 gymnasium, but it's actually a double gym and a single gym. Gymnasiums or gymnasia or natatoria or arenas with columns in the middle of it is not obviously the desire of a recreation standpoint. But what it does mean is that columns are what's used to support the weight above. It's possible, but it is so expensive to do, it's cheaper to buy land elsewhere, raise it, and build a structure full of columns like you would see in any traditional apartment building.
Okay, so my question is there anything in this zoning or in this OPA that would prevent the option of housing stacked on top of the rec center? Because it also is possible, because we're looking at air rights with projects like Lansdowne, for example, that perhaps if this made it more expensive, private housing upstairs could help fund a more expensive construction due to the housing upstairs. I'm just simply asking if that is something we wanted to do. Would we have to go back for another rezoning, or is it contained in what we have in front of us today?
I can respond to that, Chair. The existing policy required a minimum of 5 stories, and we've removed that minimum requirement for the recreation center. So there's nothing prohibitive in the official plan amendment or zoning that would prevent additional stories on that site.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Sorry, I've been told that my camera is also, I apologize. Okay, here we go. Now you can see me and not just my neck. Yeah, the angles are weird today. Okay, well, I just wanted to thank city staff for all the work that you've done on this project. This has been a tough one. I've often said it's kind of like an albatross around my neck, mostly because a piece of land like this is so valuable and one of the only ones available in the downtown core. This is a huge opportunity for the community, a new school, a massive recreation expansion, an expansion of park space. I know there's been some discussion about maybe having the arts community involved in the rec center. I know there's been consultation with Indigenous communities. I know we're looking at public art. This is going to be a really, really cool space. I think this is as good as we're going to get, and it's very good indeed. But I also just want to reassure the community that there's going to be individual consultation on every piece of this proposal, on the park, on the rec center, and on the housing that goes on there. And I know that city staff will be working hard to try to conserve space as much as possible, to preserve as much green space as possible. And I don't have it in front of me today, but I do have a direction that I'll be bringing to council about limiting any expansion of surface parking, because I agree that that's really important. But I want to thank everyone who worked on this file, and I hope my colleagues can support both the motion that I put forward about the road and also this OPA and zoning, and I'm excited to see this project move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. I don't see any other questions for staff or the applicant, so I just have one of my own, which is how far along are you in terms of getting the site plan into the city?
We are just in the concept development of our portion. With this, the school board will have the ability to move forward with its site plan. We've been working very closely, both as the city as the approving authority and us as the developer of the campus style development. I think the school is hopefully will be in the site plan process this summer. We may be the applicant with them because we may not have the land sold to them by the end of the year, but we hope to. We are currently with the province and getting a record of site condition. That's the bottleneck that's currently happening now.
Okay.
However, we hope to be out into the public soon with more engagement on the needs analysis for the rec center, the park, and how everything fits together.
Fantastic, thank you. I know Councillor Troster, I and the mayor are all keen to see the school move ahead expeditiously. So I do hope if there's anything that this committee can help you with in terms of getting those approvals, please let us know. We have no further questions. Is the Troster motion carried?
Carried.
And is the report recommendations carried?
Carried.
All right, thank you. Councillor Johnson has been able to join us now. Councillor Johnson, we held the item for Old Richmond Road. There were nobody desired to hold it, so it's just held for your comments, and then we can move ahead with a vote on that.
Thank you for the indulgence chair and committee for holding this item. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to highlight the uniqueness of this project and to thank staff and the proponent for continuing to work diligently. This site is an unusual site, but it is a site that's owned by a faith-based community that is trying to do their part to create housing for seniors. And in Bell's Corners, I hear often that residents who have lived there for 40 years, who have raised their children, their grandchildren, don't have an opportunity to stay in the neighborhood. We don't have a lot of diverse housing in Bell's Corners. And this group is working to do what they can with the funds that they raise within their own mosque to be able to advance this project. So I just wanted to, thank the proponent for stepping up for this community, for demonstrating leadership on the housing file, for, curating a community of care within the mosque to be able to fund this. And I really want to thank staff for doing everything they can to advance this project despite the limitations of the site. I know that for residents of Bell's Corners, issues of parking and traffic are already a concern. It's a very popular place for people to join in community and pray, and it does create pressure on the community during those times. I wanted to highlight that the mosque and its leadership have been doing everything they can to work with their community to try and create opportunities for that to be corrected. They have partnerships with other parking lots in the area from other churches so that people can park overflow there. And I know that staff have been monitoring the area. So I just really wanted, and I appreciate the indulgence to just offer my strong support for the project and also my awareness that this has been, incremental, working through challenges, and there's still challenges to come at site plan. I appreciate that being mentioned in the report. But we do need housing. We do need housing for seniors. We do need other neighborhoods to step up and create density where they can. And we have an example of this. This mosque has changed its articles of incorporation to be able to provide housing. That's how committed they are. And so they were also able to access development charge waivers and other things through the city to try and make this as financially feasible as possible. So there really have been just exemplary steps along the way of everyone involved to work through this. And I just wanted to say it's in service of the city's priorities and for my neighborhood and for all of those involved. I'm just really grateful for getting us here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. I don't see any questions. Is this item carried? Thank you. And thanks for indulgence on that, folks. Moving along. Yeah, Riverside. So we are going to contemplate the zoning bylaw amendment for 3930 Riverside Drive. There is a presentation and there are delegations. What I'll do is ask staff to make, Councillor Brockington, did you have anything today?
Sorry, Chair.
Did you have a motion or direction or anything?
I'm going to ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to move into the presentation with Kelby, and then we'll move into public delegations, followed by the applicant, unless the applicant wants to go before the public delegations. But first, we'll get the presentation from city staff.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair and committee members. So this is the zoning bylaw amendment for 3930 Riverside Drive. Next slide, please. This site is outlined in red in the center of the screen. The site is north of Hunt Club Road, west of Riverside Drive, and east of the Rideau River. Beyond the property to the east is the Ottawa Hunt and Golf Club. To the southeast, diagonally across the Riverside Drive and Hunt Club intersection is a commercial retail plaza, and beyond that, the Ottawa International Airport. North of the site is the Uplands Riverside Park and Riverwood Park, environmental protection lands, and existing Quintera residential neighborhood. The picture on the bottom right shows the property from Riverside Drive looking west. As you can see, the lands are at a lower elevation than that of the roadway and are currently undeveloped. Next slide, please. You may have seen in the zoning report that there are a number of schedules from the OP that apply to the site, so I'm going to run through some of these schedules. I've colored the property in the center of the screen and added a dashed circle to help zero in on it. The lands are defined as neighborhood and green space, and Riverside Drive adjacent to the property is defined as a minor corridor. Next slide, please. Riverside Drive and Hunt Club Road are designated as transit priority corridors. Next slide, please. A major pathway is defined running along the east side of the Rideau River and is considered in the development of the site. Riverside Drive and Hunt Club Road are both defined as arterial roadways. Next slide, please. Schedule C2 on the left identifies an urban natural feature that will be designated as environmental protection lands. as well as Uplands Riverside Park along the north side of the property, which will be expanded. Riverside Drive and Hunt Club Road are also defined as scenic routes. Next slide, please. The site is located within the airport vicinity development zone. It's the light yellow area around outlined in red. And it is inside of the 25 line, which is the composite line of noise exposure forecast and noise exposure prediction, shown in the dashed black line. But the site is outside of the airport operating influence zone, and development within the 25 line require noise warning clauses on title. Next slide, please. On this plan, you'll note, or I'll note, that the north is to the right of the image. The mid and high-rise apartments are to be located along the southern and eastern property boundaries along Hunt Club Road and Riverside Drive. Townhouses are identified centrally to the site, and the single detached houses are placed to the northwest of the development area of the site. The lands between the single detached dwellings and the Rideau River will become environmental protection lands. Along the northern property line, the Uplands Riverside Park will be expanded. Next slide, please. The rendering on the left demonstrates the change in maximum building elevation across the property. The leftmost building in the image is located on the southwest part of the property close to the Shefflin Bridge, with the rightmost building being on the northeast part of the property just south of the Uplands Riverside Park. The image on the right is the building height schedule, which will be included in the zoning as a new schedule. The height schedule applies to the GM1 zone on the property and ranges from 123.08 meters above sea level on the southwest corner, which is the bottom left, and increases to 151.79 meters above sea level in the northeast, which is the top right. It should be noted that the existing zoning permits a maximum height of 137 meters above sea level across the site. However, this new zoning schedule will actually reduce the maximum height below 137 meters for all lands to the west or left of the 137 meter elevation line on that map. Next slide, please. So the zoning report outlines the requested zoning changes from general mixed use, urban exception, 1719, schedule 251, to a mix of general mixed use, subzone 1, residential third density, parks and open space, and environmental protection. The urban exception for the GM1 zone will include semi-detached dwelling and hotels, or hotel as a permitted use. Apartment dwelling high-rise will be carried over from the existing GM zoning with the maximum permitted height derived from the height schedule. The schedule for the GM1 zone will be an updated height schedule aligning with the airport height restrictions. The urban exception for the R3 zone will reduce the rear yard setback for townhouses from 6 meters to 5 meters. And staff recommends the approval of this zoning amendment application. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We'll move into public delegations before we have an opportunity to chat with staff. First up will be Joel Sack, who will be followed by Audrey Bélanger. And good morning. Whenever you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair and members of Planning and Housing Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Joel Takach. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for the Ottawa International Airport Authority. I am here to urge you to not approve the proposed 660-unit residential development at 3930 and 3960 Riverside Drive. Next slide, please. As you can see on this map and the map shown previously, this site sits underneath the flight path of runway 1432, YOW's longest, and within the circuit loop for general aviation and flight training on runway 0422, which is the shorter one that you see in the center of that diagram. On average, 80 aircraft movements occur here daily at altitudes between 50 and 150 meters. Although the proposed residential development land lies just barely outside the boundary of the airport operating influence zone, noise does not respect arbitrary lines on a map. When the city plotted Schedule C14 contours, geographic convenience was prioritized over noise impacts. Consequently, high-density housing is not proposed in this area. It's never meant for noise-sensitive use. Had the boundary line accurately reflected noise paths, rather than being deliberately curved to align with the bend of Riverside Drive, this application would have been dismissed long ago. We've seen the fallout when homes encroach on airports. Montreal Trudeau, Toronto Pearson, Toronto Billy Bishop downtown have all endured waves of complaints, political pressures, and resulting curfews, and therefore lost air service. The consequences are real. Fewer flights, reduced cargo capacity, diminished global connections, and lost jobs. At YOW, we generate $2 billion in annual economic activity and support 10,000 jobs. Undermining our long-term viability would be a serious setback for Canada's capital region. Approving the development also runs counter to provincial and federal directives. Ontario's 2024 provincial policy statement instructs municipalities to protect airports' long-term operations and economic functions. In April, the Federal Minister of Transport called on cities and airports to collaborate early to safeguard airspace. Endorsing this residential plan undermines both messages. The land is zoned for general mixed use where commercial or light industrial development is the obvious function, not housing. Shifting 100% residential erodes a protective land use buffer that's essential to YOW's sustainable operations. Without them, we'll be challenged to meet rising air service demand, support northern resupply missions, and even head of state or Department of National Defense operations. Since June 2023, the Airport Authority has engaged city staff, Taggart Realty, NAV Canada, and Transport Canada, sharing information and voicing concerns. We confirm that residents will endure constant overhead traffic from heavy jets and low-flying single-engine aircraft. And guess what? A note on title about airport proximity does nothing to comfort someone who can't sleep, can't concentrate, or can't enjoy their own home. If the will to do the right thing is lacking, then at minimum, do something. Insist on permanent aviation noise warning signage throughout and around the development. Next slide, please. As you can see from this image, Mississauga has adopted this approach. Signage won't solve the underlying problem, but it might help prevent future conflicts by making the risk crystal clear for buyers, residents, and even their visitors. Let me close with a simple message. A family moves into their new home. The windows are open for fresh air. The children are in bed. Then a jet roars overhead, then another, then another. The noise shakes walls, wakes babies, frays nerves. The next day, flight training resumes. Aircraft circling overhead all day with no reprieve. This isn't a hypothetical situation. This is an absolute certainty for this location. Please don't create a problem we already know how to prevent. Protect your airport, protect your residents, and safeguard the prosperity of this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the delegate? Councillor Dudas?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about the map that has the lines drawn denoting residential and the area that would be impacted by noise from the airport. When were those lines drawn?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Chair. Those lines were drawn by city staff approximately 15 years ago, based on noise reports provided by the airport. I've been with the Airport Authority for 10 years, and so that predates me. However, the fact that we are here today, 15 years later, tells me that nobody ever thought that it would be a good idea to put residential in this area. Light industrial, commercial is a use that is approved in that area and the one that makes the most common sense, as what we do in and around the airport land.
You mentioned about the frequency of flights above what is being proposed. Can you put some numbers to that? Like how many times a day would people be impacted by that? You mentioned heavy jets flying above. Can you give a little bit more information in respect to that?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Councillor Chair. We estimate that there are, well, we don't estimate, we know that on average there are 80 aircraft occurrences that fly over that airspace daily.
Sorry, 80?
80. That's inclusive of heavy jets taking off northbound on the longest runway. So that would be your flight to London, that would be your Paris flight, that would be heavy cargo aircraft going to the north, some Department of National Defense equipment. In addition to that, the shorter runway that actually runs more east-west is the runway used for general aviation and flight school training. They fly constant circles as they do circuits around, and they do touch and goes on the airport as part of regulation, as part of regular training.
Has the airport authority sought any legal advice in respect to this?
Our documents go back to the city dated June 2023, and we asked the general manager of planning and housing and economic development what the best path to pursue was. Our understanding was to follow due course, and we have done so since then. And unfortunately, we're here today.
Okay, that is appreciated. However, my recommendation would have been to seek some legal advice throughout, only because, once again, following due course has led you here today. That's unfortunate. You spoke about signage, and I believe, was that from Mississauga?
Yes, Councillor, Mississauga.
How long has that been in place, and has that resulted in the airport being able to operate without any implications?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. The signage as shown on this, previously shown on the screen, has been up for several years in Mississauga. What happens is that because of the order of magnitude of Toronto Pearson, which frankly is about 10 times the size of Ottawa International, their problems are tenfold. And so one of the things that we're trying to prevent is exactly what has transpired in Toronto. And Toronto has curfews, and Toronto has limitations on its operations as a result of residential housing getting too close to the airport. So the signage helps. It helps people understand what they're getting into. It gives the airport additional communication tools to say it was clear this is what was happening, but nonetheless, their complaints are still extremely high, and it's led to operational constraints.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. To Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your delegation. Is your concern that people will buy or rent in this area kind of unknowingly? That because when I read the report, it even says right in it that it's fine as long as you close your windows. You have really good windows and you close them. That's their feedback on the noise report. And obviously that doesn't happen a lot. I know my own residents complain when you do maintenance on your runway and switch and do a different runway, and then it comes over to us in the west. And I hear all about it, and that's just for a very brief time. Is that your concern, is that residents will start complaining and then forcing you to limit flights? I'm trying to think of worst case scenario.
Yes, Councillor. Thank you very much for the question and the statement. 100% agree that one thing about aircraft noise that we know as a result of the complaints we currently receive is that, using my words, it's a slow burn. One person can stand there and say, well, this could be an interesting place to live, and have an aircraft fly overhead, and that's not too bad. Once you're there permanently, and that is your residence, and you're trying to enjoy your place or the grounds around it, constant aircraft traffic is one that just builds up and literally frays nerves, because when we do receive the complaints, they're simply not saying, we heard an aircraft. They're at wit's end, and they're passionate and they're upset, and I sympathize with them, because residential and is not a compatible use anywhere near an airport. And so the concern is not only with an open window, that's the example that I cited, it's people using the park space, it's people using the open space, it's people on their balcony or in their backyards. We're talking about 660 residential units in a small concentrated area. Once they organize, once they start lobbying, once they start putting pressure, when they shouldn't be there in the first place, is going to create tension and problems.
Do you think the city should be rezoning the area? at this time?
The best that I can assume is that there was confidence that the zoning that is existing, which is general mixed use, simply stated the obvious, that it's the commercial and the light industrial that is appropriate there. Residential is not. And so the zoning of it being mixed, and now the proposal is 100% residential, is just off base.
Thank you. I'm going to ask staff questions, but one thing that that came up is just the fact that there's such pressure for housing that we're looking for all sources of land. And would this survive the Ontario Land Tribunal if it was opposed? And that's a question I'm going to ask for staff later. I don't know if you've looked into that.
May I address that?
Sure.
Chair, so the province of Ontario, in addition to the federal government, have all spoken recently in favor of protecting airspace. And this is a prime example of the concern that they are trying to address. So technically, it falls just barely on the side of a line that was intentionally curved to follow the bend of a road. And so how this could potentially get escalated, it technically meets the requirement, however, does not pass any high-level direction or even any common sense test. So that's the situation that we're in now, Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Takash, for coming down today. We appreciate hearing from the airport. I'm just trying to get some timelines clarified, if I may. When did the airport first raise with the city's planning team concerns with this file?
Councillor, I am on record formally through a letter to the General Manager of Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development, and that letter was dated and it was sent June 1st, 2023.
And so take me through conversations or meetings you've had over the last little while, because this file has been before us in 2019. It's been a long journey to get here today. We'll hear through other delegates some of the challenges we've had. But talk to me about those conversations trying to iron this out. The report doesn't reference the airport raising these concerns, so I'm trying to figure out if you have raised them, if you could walk me through those conversations.
Certainly. Councillor, I appreciate the question through the chair. Personally, I'm extremely disappointed in the report because it does not adequately voice the airport's concern that we have been 100% consistent on since 2023, and we've been consistent with other properties even prior to that. And so what we have did is we wrote the letter in 2023 and we explicitly asked the GM Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development advice on the best process to follow in order to help resolve the situation. And the written response was, thank you for the letter, let's continue dialogue. And through those dialogues, it was follow due course. So as part of that due course, in November 2023, there was a meeting with Taggart, including Airport Authority staff, where we expressed our concern. And then on March 9th, there was more correspondence. And then on December 15th, 2023, it escalated to me in my role with the Airport Authority and also met with Taggart and expressed the concerns. Then the file went quiet. We continued to follow due process as a result of the similar type of response that we do for any type of development. And there were sort of standard responses of, well, we're against this. And however, if it is to proceed, there's the noise abatement, there's the don't build anything that attracts birds, which is common for due course. And then when we finally saw the proposal coming back again in the form that it exists today, we then raised our concern once again.
Fair enough. I appreciate that outline. As the local councillor, I was first alerted to the airport's concerns when we met about 2 weeks ago. So I appreciated that meeting, but since I hadn't heard about previous concerns, sort of late in the game for me to sort of absorb all that, but I appreciate that outline. the Ottawa Flying Club, you referenced, airport activity, flight activity in the area and concerns that local residents and others have raised. They are concerned that in just a few years, they could be asked to relocate from their current site, which would eliminate the flights in the local area. Can you confirm if it's the airport's plan to not renew their lease and therefore we would not see the Ottawa Flying Club using the Ottawa International Airport?
The ongoing discussions with the Ottawa Flying Club, I don't think are extremely relevant in this case, Councillor, is that we're talking about airport noise in general. The Ottawa Flying Club is one of many users of the airport, and they are a major part of flight training, but flight training takes place in many different locations in many different forms, and the general aviation use runway is used by more than the Ottawa Flying Club in particular.
I appreciate that. I raise it only because you reference flights circling the area, which have generated concerns in the past. And if you're going to raise that today, and if it's your intent to evict them from their current site, I think it was a relevant question. In March 2019, Committee and Council last approved an application that Taggart had before us. And at that time, you did not register opposition to their application. So why didn't you register opposition then, but you are today?
I don't know the exact circumstances around March 29th to speak to it specifically. However, what I can say is that if the city is to look back historically to any noise-sensitive use anywhere near airport grounds, we have constantly and consistently cited the exact same thing, which is that there should be no residential, which is part of noise-sensitive use in and around airport property. And there are many noise-sensitive uses of which we've spoken out against in the past, and this is one of several.
Okay. The March 2019 application included a seniors residence, a tower, a private school, another mixture of residences and other mixed use. So yes, it was a mixed use development, but there were certainly vulnerable residents then, which the airport did not object to at that time. So I appreciate the airport coming down here. I think, it's important for us to factor the airport's concerns into our decision making. And what Mr. Takash outlines, I think, is the worst possible case scenario if multiple complaints are received and that leads to political decisions being made. It could have impacts on the airport. I know I'm debating now and should focus to questions, but I'll elaborate further when I get to speak. But again, staff need to respond to some of the concerns that were raised. So when we get to questions for staff, Madam Chair, I will follow up on some of the concerns that we have heard from the airport this morning. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming out. My entire ward, as you may know, is practically underneath the flight path for landings at 07 and takeoffs at 25, I think. And that includes a lot of the planes you mentioned, right? That includes the largest the Air France flights, and everything right up, maybe down to fighter jets. And so my experience with aircraft noise amongst my residents is that generally people are used to them. Now and then there's sort of one that they would bring up. That's extra loud, like when the cargo jet takes off, when the first air, I don't think the first air exists anymore, right? Anyway, that plane goes to the north, and of course the fighter jets. Do you receive from existing communities now, so whether it's Barrhaven or whatever communities are north and south of the longer runway, or to the east, do you receive an inordinate amount of complaints about aircraft noise? Or because I guess what I'm trying to think here is, does that really come up that frequently?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, the Chair. Councillor, your ward is a lot further than 950 meters away from the runway threshold, even though you were referring to runway 0725, which is the one that runs more of an east-west, and heavy gauge aircraft will land on it, but they often don't take off on it. And so a takeoff is much louder than a landing, but you were 100% correct. We received many complaints from the Barrhaven area. Just imagine your area geographically transported 950 meters away from the threshold of the longest runway, which has the loudest aircraft using it. So absolutely, the number of complaints that we received last year, we received 140 noise complaints. And I would have to say that the vast majority of them are passionate, they are frustrated, and that's come from approximately 85 households. And these are from people that are separated from the runways in much further distances than what this proposal is.
Yeah, so that's sort of my thinking. We are that far away, right? So then my next question, sort of, I don't know if you have any knowledge. I don't know if you have any knowledge of how the curfews that you mentioned that happen at Montreal, Trudeau Airport and Pearson. What is there? You know, that's a Transport Canada process, I think. And is there a sort of a threshold in terms of like how many resident complaints come up, how many noise complaints come up to trigger that process? Is it a long formal process? Is it mandatory to review it if there's like X number of complaints that come up, or is that more arbitrary a decision by TC?
Thank you for the question. Is ultimately the louder the lobby, the louder the political support to put constraints on the airport, the more it's impacted. So if we take a look at the curfews at airports around us, Toronto Pearson will have curfews on engine run-ups, which essentially is that it's the airline or the maintenance repair overhaul company that is testing the engine, stress testing it before it gets attached to an aircraft and that aircraft goes airborne. If you take a look at what's happening on the grounds of the Ottawa Airport right now, Porter recently built a $125 million hangar, and we're the heart of their maintenance for their jet fleet. That involves engine run-ups. So we run the risk of limiting those types of operation, those types of growth. There's also curfews on type of aircraft because some aircraft are louder than others. There are also curfews specifically just on a time of day, hard stop unless it's an emergency situation. All of those are real examples in Toronto, Montreal, and downtown Billy Bishop that we're trying to avoid because our opportunity is to operate for the good of the National Capital Region, to create those jobs, to sustain those jobs, and to increase our global connectivity. So all of those are at risk the more that the complaints come in. And the more complaints will come in when you put residential housing 950 meters away from a runway threshold.
Okay, no, thanks very much for your comments.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Tierney.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for coming out today because I actually had some questions myself recently, and it's funny, every time there's changes to flight paths, does that get filed somewhere? Obviously probably with the federal government, because I'm very far away, but I'm along the river. And of course, I even get complaints that there's this new whistling noise over the last few years. And I assume that's related to the change of flight paths. Are these things published publicly? I'm just asking you while I got you here on the floor.
Yes, they are. So NAV Canada is essentially responsible for, think of it as highways in the sky. And so sometimes those are adjusted for reasons that NAVCAN determines. As an airport, we're essentially the ground infrastructure. However, what we do as part of being a good citizen is that we communicate what's taking place, what's happening, whether we're resurfacing a runway or doing ongoing maintenance. There may be some changes, but of course, flight paths, particularly from landing and takeoff perspective, are heavily impacted by the weather. Which way the wind is blowing, what the cloud cover is, and obviously aircraft gauge as well. Heavier aircraft need longer runways, and the lighter ones can go on the shorter.
Yeah, for sure. And there has been something noticeable. I'll look into it more. So now I know where to look for that. And there definitely is more of a whistling noise. And I'm sure Laura's heard it too, and a few other people in our neck of the woods because of the river and the flights in. You mentioned there was 140 people that had complained. Ballpark, I think it was 140 was the number?
Yeah, 140 complaints from 85 households.
85 households. And are they all, do you have a breakdown on what I want to know if some of them are from my neighborhood, because I have a feeling that there's quite a few from my neighborhood as well. So I think regardless where it is. I certainly, the closer you get, there'll probably be a bit more, but I think there's other aspects of the city too that are hearing it as well, right?
Yes, that's correct. So thank you for the question. We track noise complaints, and that's the reason why we have a good sense, not only a good sense, 100% accurate sense of where they come from when people disclose what their locations are.
Good.
And to no surprise, the closer you are to the airport,
yeah,
the more in line with you are with runways, the more noise complaints that we have.
Great. And is that publicly available, or is it something you're willing to share? I think that could be actually a good, this will rise to council, I assume, Chair? Or clerks? It will. Is that something you can share in advance of our council meeting, where those 140 points are? I'm more curious myself.
Yes, so we have within our website in the environmental social governance section, under the environmental, you dig a little bit deeper, there's a pretty comprehensive section about noise.
Right.
And we disclose quite a bit of information there. I can double check to see if we have a location map, but essentially if you look at an overhead map of the airport, just keep drawing straight lines from the airports, from the runways, then those will be your largest sources of aircraft noise complaints.
Excellent. I look forward to that data. And last, I always point to, and this is a good part about it being a municipal politician, I always say, well, flight paths are federal regulation and complain to your MP. Which is good news. I blame them for the weather as well, just so you know. That being said, when it comes to something like this, have you approached Minister Freeland or someone, obviously the airport being under federal regulation, have they not come in and said, what, like, it's one thing to talk about it provincially or federally, it's another thing to legislate. Have you approached the federal government about legislation on this?
Yes, Councillor. So we are part of the Canadian Airport Council. We're active members in it. Essentially, that is our industry association. That is our advocacy voice. And so ultimately, you're exactly right, sir, is that there is federal jurisdiction over airports. However, when it comes to land zoning in the municipalities of which we occupy, that sits at the municipal level. And so the federal government as well as the provincial government both give very pointed direction that land around airports should be protected because of the economic viability and the essential service that airports provide. So why are municipalities continuously, through pressure through development and pressure for housing, infringing on an airport's buffer zone, essentially? And particularly in this case, we're essentially talking about a loophole on the way that the line was drawn. And so that comes back to the municipal level.
Yeah, and it's odd how the federal government picks and chooses when they want to interfere with municipalities. Like on road paint, you've probably seen my advocacy on that one, where they've forced down on municipalities what they think about road paint, but on something that you're clearly seeing as an issue, you can't get the federal government to the table to legislate, which they do have that power on something like this. Say you work with your airport groups and they're not willing to do anything like this?
No, so something like that would be looked at as a national issue. So therefore, we go through our industry association, which is quite active on those files.
Yeah, they pick road paint. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Tierney. Councillor Tierney. Councillor Kitts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You had mentioned impact to flight service, and I'm wondering if that means lost routes in the future. You had said you've been aware of this application since June 1st, 2023. Since then, I know there's been several announcements about adding new routes, which obviously we're very excited about. So my question is, were you able to add those services with the assumption that this would not move forward? Or are you suggesting that it would put new flight offerings at risk in the future if this does move forward?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. The challenge is that in order to meet the needs of the airlines, is that an airport authority, particularly an airport the size of Ottawa, we very much have to be in we're open for business communication when we're talking to airlines. And when the airline wants to operate in order to add Ottawa as a point in its global network, if you use Air France as an example, they serve over 200 destinations worldwide. They have a fleet of a couple hundred aircraft, and they don't have to fly to Ottawa. So when Air France says this is the time that we want to operate because it fits within our network schedule, it fits within our operational schedule, it fits within our aircraft maintenance schedule, our job is to say, yes, we can accommodate that. And so the pressure of what you have is that airlines most frequently want to operate in the morning, and then they want to operate late afternoon. You literally at some point just run out of slots, which is essentially an appointment for your aircraft to land and take off and use the terminal. So then you start pushing out from those peak times. Those peak times are where the most complaints come from. And then therefore you're in that circle of risk of you need to cap your peak times, or you can't operate outside your peak times. And therefore you're not open for business in order to accommodate an airline's preference to include Ottawa in their network. That's the risk. And the other risk is cargo. Cargo often operates towards the end of the day. And so we have a decent sized cargo operation. The primary focus of the cargo and the primary source of the volume is supplying Canada's Eastern Arctic via Canadian North and cargo jet that then flies to Iqaluit and then distributes its goods throughout the remainder of the Eastern Arctic. Cargo flights tend to operate in the evening, and that's another major challenge of limiting the operation or limiting a certain runway at a certain time. Literally, the big gauge equipment cannot take off.
Okay, so you are saying then that if this file were to move forward, it changes our position in being open for business, and there is a risk to our added flight offerings. That's what
yes, Councillor. My apologies if I wasn't clear earlier.
No.
Is that it runs in a massive risk of compromising the airport's ability to meet the demands of airlines, not only passenger airlines, cargo, and in addition to potentially the Department of National Defense that uses YOW in a unique way in comparison to other Canadian airports.
Okay, thank you for that. That's it for me, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Curry.
Yeah, thank you for this. I just want to ask, so councillors will recall that the two special economic districts, the airport and the tech park, are both undergoing right now a fairly significant review as to what that really means. What is a special economic district other than just a name? So Bloomberg was engaged by the city, and they have been doing a thorough review of the two districts and, of course, how they are connected, importantly connected. A lot has changed over the past couple of years while our senior staff have been looking at this with the new Strategic Initiatives Department and Bloomberg coming on board, and a lot of the new flights we're getting. So, and of course, our situation to the US and to the south with President Trump. And I'm going to make other arguments. As you can tell, I'm going to be voting against this application regardless. But I did want to ask the Airport Authority in general how well known it is that the Airport Authority is involved in the talks with Bloomberg and with city staff. Have you been involved in that yourself, or is that something that is done by other staff at Airport Authority?
And no, Councillor, so ultimately I'm responsible for the commercial portfolio for the Airport Authority. And so anything that impacts that, which is inclusive of air service, which is inclusive of land development, inclusive of concessions, parking, ground transportation, essentially all the revenue sources. So I am familiar with what you're referring to. We also have to respect some commercial sensitivities that we have with tenants, potential tenants, and even specific details on leases. So with that, I look forward to being able to point to a project and say this is a result of the special economic status that we enjoy with the city, and we're thankful for it. And hopefully there'll be something coming in the future that will reflect that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is very premature, and I would say this application probably came long before we had our designation of those two districts, and long before we determined that they needed much more of a clear plan. So I'll have more to say when I ask staff. I understand planning rationale and the details on this, but I think there's so much more to this file than just simply planning rules. But anyway, thank you for your answer.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry. Seeing no more questions, thank you for your delegation today. Next up, we have Audrey Belanger, please. Is Audrey online?
Hello?
Thank you. We can hear you. You have 5 minutes. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. My name is Audrey Belanger. I am the president of the Hun Club Community Association, and I'm here today with some of my colleagues. I think they might have spoken earlier, unless they've been pushed to later with me right now. Thank you for adjusting the schedule to allow me to attend. The HCCA is in favor of this project. The Hun Club Community Association understands that we need housing, we need it inside our urban boundaries, and that this is a project which brings in, which would bring in 660 new housing units, which is significant and which is very welcomed. We have been working with the applicant for a very long time on this file to provide some input. And we have actually requested that they provide even more housing units on this land. It is so close to amenities, to grocery store. It is in an area that has good connections, including connections to up Riverside, accessing an LRT. Going through our current neighborhood, there's also an LRT station. There's so much potential for active transportation. We are truly hopeful, and this does not go in contradiction with what the airport authority has said. We think that there can be more housing here. There could be a lot more missing middle. And we have urged the applicant to commit to some submarket affordable housing and also in increasing the number of housing units. And it would be possible for these additional units at market rent to help subsidize these submarket units. The development could be a little bit less high, but still dense because the overall density of the project would be increased. There could be mixed use, which the zoning would allow, and this would make for a strong project. It has been in the works for a very long time, for many, many years. And it would be detrimental in the view of the HCCA to continue to delay this project. Because every time we delay it, the costs of the project goes up and we are less and less likely to get affordable housing. The HCCA also welcomes the multi-use pathway in the Riverwood Park. And we want to bring to Council's attention notable trees that are endangered and which we believe absolutely need to be protected to protect the essence of our woods and what makes this area such a ecological wonder. We also want to highlight the need for active transportation, connecting to the Mooney's Bay cycling path, connecting to the rest of the neighborhood to reach South Keys, so that the development has minimal impact on traffic flows, which is quite a challenge already for the city at Riverside Drive and Hun Club. There is so much potential here. We truly believe this project should go forward, and we think it can.
Thank you, Madame Belanger.
I'm not able to, thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking around to see if there's questions, and you have one from Councillor Troster.
Hi there, thanks for
Thanks for
being here. Ooh, I don't know why.
I'm on mute. Yep. Okay. Is that better? Okay, great. Sorry about that. I'm always very happy when community associations come and lobby for more housing and more density in their neighborhood. So I appreciate that. But what do you say about the noise concerns? Like when I heard about this development, I thought, oh my goodness, this is just this is 900 meters from the runway. Like, how do you respond to the concerns from the airport authority on this one?
I think the airport authority had a lot of time to raise these concerns. There's been development projects, including towers higher than this, discussed before, and it was never something raised by the airport authority. When it comes to noise concerns, people get to choose where they want to live. If they choose to live there, understanding that there could be some noise, for some people their schedule allows it, and that's fine. I don't think that canceling this project, stopping it, serves anyone. There could be tweaks made to it if that's what council wants, and if that's preferable. But there's no reason that at the very least, a dense development of missing housing with the same number of units or more wouldn't reach those goals and appease the concerns of the airport authority. We think the project could go as is and that further delays would be problematic because it's been delayed so much already.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question. You mentioned affordable housing, but this is a commercial development. I haven't seen any proposal for nonprofit housing in this.
No, there hasn't been any yet. We have asked the applicant to include a commitment for sub-market housing. They have done that in other of their developments when there was government funds to support that. We think that they could increase the density to help adding this more affordable housing. But the fact is that when new housing goes up, even when it's market rent, that helps alleviate the housing crisis and prices in the surrounding areas. So even though this is not currently planned to be deeply affordable housing, it will help alleviate the housing crisis, at least for it to worsen less where we live. As a community association, we get emails on the regular from families looking for housing in our area. So there's definitely a need, and nobody's asking us about the planes. From my personal perspective, the noise of the airport is not significant. The most damaging noise is from the small aircrafts, the ones that carry 2 passengers.
Okay, thank you. Your perspective is refreshing and you've given me more to think about. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor Curry.
Yes, thank you for coming and offering this perspective. I guess the affordable housing piece is that sometimes I feel like that's not really the type of housing where someone would say they absolutely had the choice, where they could live anywhere and they would choose to live 900 meters from the runway. But I guess I'm just asking you, would you personally with your children want to live 900 meters from the runway and you would buy something there?
We need housing for everybody. Whether that's the most appropriate housing for a family, and they're, as far as I understand, not planning on building condos that are family size. I think that's a moot point. People live where they can. It's not like everybody currently gets to live wherever they want the most in our city. Giving people more option is better than not giving it to them.
Right. I just want to know if you would want to live there.
I could live there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brockington has a question for you.
Thank you, Audrey, for coming down. Appreciate your and the association's work on this file. I'll just say real quick, I wanted to live in Riverside Park when I was able to buy a home, and the only home I could afford was on the street I'm on now, and I'm right beside the Via Rail track. And I hear 40 to 50 trains a day. The only time they can work on the track is at night, and in the summer I am kept up all hours of the night as they work on the line. And I chose to live there. I live beside a train, and I'm not aware of anyone that's ever filed a complaint against Via Rail because we live beside a train track. And my ward office in Hunt Club is directly under the path of the Cessna flights. I can literally see the tires. I can read off the plane. It's that close, that low. Anyway, my question for you, in addition to thanking you, is just on some of the other issues that you've raised, in particular, the affordable housing is one, but can you just underscore for my committee colleagues some concerns in particular with the flow of traffic? This is right beside the intersection of Hunt Club and Riverside. Can you just summarize what we experience on a daily basis here and concerns that our community and the association has with the intersection in particular?
Thank you, Riley. Yes, Hunt Club and Riverside is the intersection with the most small collisions in all of Ottawa. There is significant delays. It is long. Drivers are distracted. when they take the slip lane and they look to try to safely go forward, but then they rear end the car in front of them because they haven't gone yet. It is definitely a challenge. It is very unpleasant and unsafe for people who are biking, for pedestrians who are crossing. There's so much potential. This development cannot be a car-dependent development and has the potential to add so much to what our community has, to the neighbors that we have, and to the business and area around. We need improvements, continued improvements, because we know that council has already started improvements to this intersection, but we need a plan and we need council to bring forward a bike lane as a top priority for Riverside Drive to ensure that we're not adding to this issue and we're helping solving it. Because we have bike lanes in the intersection from the recent improvements that you have made. Thank you very much. But we need it to continue. We can't throw cyclists into traffic at 70 kilometers per hour with cars racing beside them. They need to be able to get to the LRT, to their destination safely, to reach Mooney's Bay. It's so little space that needs to be added to really build this network. So few kilometers. It's the biggest low-hanging fruit that you could do to truly make this place a success and improve our intersection.
Thank you for your delegation today and all your work with the associations. Appreciate it. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bélanger. I'm sorry I don't see any further questions for you. Thank you very much for your delegation today. We'll move on to Andre Grushman, if they're here. Kelly, is Andre here? Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking online. Bring Lane back.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Andre Grushman. I'm chair of the Affordable Housing Committee for the Hunt Club Community Association. For the record, I live in Quintera, Riverwood, which is right next to where this proposed development is located. We do have airport noise, of course. Airplanes go by frequently. We're also not far from the CNR line that Councillor Brockington has referenced. For us, where we are, the noise is not an issue, but we're not 950 meters away. The airport's concerns only came to our attention a week or two ago. So we're not really, I'm not in a position to say what the issue should be there. What I can say is that we've had a long and involved discussion with the city and the proponent as well. I'd like to thank Councillor Brockington for his strong support throughout this exercise. And Kelby, the planner, for answering an endless stream of questions. And Mr. Kazda from Taggart for meeting with us last summer, having a very constructive discussion. Audrey has laid out a number of our issues. We do support increased housing. We are still concerned about the traffic flows, although we understand that's not directly a zoning issue. With respect to the proposed multi-use pathway through Riverwood Park, we have 2 points. One, that we enthusiastically welcome the proposed pathway for a number of reasons. But 2, we are concerned that a number of notable trees, a little community of old growth trees right at the entrance of Riverwood Park, might be affected by the route of the pathway. And we have urged, and we continue to urge the city and the proponent to take utmost care in the detailed design of the pathway. so that there is minimal impact on that community of very notable trees. They include an endangered butternut tree, which is large and unusually healthy, a yellow birch that is over 250 years old, and a peach leaf willow that is probably the tallest and the largest in Canada, certainly larger than anything in the United States. So we appreciate the assurance by Taggart and the city that they will try to narrow the corridor as much as possible, quote unquote, where possible. And we appreciate that. And we appreciate the commitment to consult with us further during the detailed design stage when there is something to consult upon. So our experience has been that this is a very interesting and somewhat complicated proposal, but that it will provide benefits in terms of a recreational amenity for residents. It will provide connectivity to the city and NCC's pathway network, and hopefully the bike path along Riverside one day, and that it does make sense generally to follow the path of the stormwater pipe through the park. But because this is an environmental protection zone, it is a city park, city property. It is not in the way of housing. No housing will be affected if the route of the pathway is shifted. We think that the city's tree protection policies and their accessibility standards should be balanced appropriately to find the best solution. So once again, thank you, and we look forward to the next step in the process.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andre, for coming down today. I simply want to thank you for being one of the leads on this file, and the significant amount of engagement and research, and as you say, question and answer and meetings that we've had. How long have you and the community been engaged in this file?
Well, the community has been engaged through various previous iterations of the plan. We've been engaged from the beginning of the current proposal, and we've scrutinized the proponent's environmental impact study and found some areas where we thought that they had misidentified certain trees along the pathway. When the consultants for the proponent stuck to their guns, we went out and hired our own tree expert from an engineering firm, CBCL, who collaborated our identification, which, by the way, was made by tree experts from the Ottawa Field Naturalist Club, the oldest and largest citizen scientist group of its kind in the country, founded in 1879. And Owen Clark and Jacob Mueller, the past president of the OFNC, were the first to spot the unusual peach leaf willow and yellow birch. So it has been a collaborative effort. It has taken a lot of work to really understand what the proponent and the city have in mind. We still have some questions. We understand that the current vision is that there will be a pathway, not an accessible pathway, on day one of the completion of the stormwater pipe. And then effort will be made by the city and the proponent to reduce the grade of the pathway during the detailed design phase and get funding to be able to lessen the grade to 5% to make it truly accessible. We support that. We just are very uncomfortable with the option that was initially proposed for a switchback that would zigzag up this rather steep slope and thereby create a very large work impact zone that would probably result in the removal of the butternut. So we're aware that the provincial guidelines on recreational trails say that switchbacks should be used as a last resort. And we hope that the proponent and the city will come up with a creative solution that perhaps has a series of steps and avoids damage to the surrounding trees. The purpose of the MUP, after all, is for people to enjoy the wonders of nature. And
Sorry,
it would
if
be
I may,
ironic if it
I don't want to get too
Thank
deep into
you,
the
please.
weeds of what's ultimately going to be some fairly detailed design work. We're at the
Yeah.
zoning stage
Yeah.
here today. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, sir. I just, again, want to reiterate the association is supportive of the staff recommendation before us, correct?
Yep.
All right, thank you. That's
Thank
it,
you.
Chair.
Thank you very much, and I don't see any further questions for you. Is Dave Coyle here? Oh. Welcome. You'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee whenever you're ready, sir.
Morning. I have a presentation. I will go through it relatively within the 5 minutes. Complete community developments should be inclusive of complete community. Is my message. So commercial is a very important thing for active transportation. From the briefing, slide 2, back in February 15th, 2023, themes came out of transportation, affordable housing, local retail, active transportation, tree protection, and green space. Slide 3. Locating the development, this would be River Ward's Southern Gateway development into the ward. So at the Riverside Drive and Hunt Club, we have this development, which we support. To the left bottom, you can see our projection of if you're going to London and Paris. In this plan, there would possibly be boom aircraft glide paths to consider. And as Riley mentions to the top left move, this is now where we have the latest in high-speed rail and high-frequency rail going through our neighborhood. So Riverside Drive. Next slide, please. We have been processing ever since Riley has been briefing us in the community, and as of late, we spent a Saturday morning, maybe 100, 120 people going through the comprehensive planning zone. I know it's been 2 years since we've looked at this file, but a lot of innovative thinking has occurred and the file should be updated. So the big, you see to the right, you see the LRT is some distance. Active transportation or transit support is going to be required. That's not a criticism. This is not acknowledged that we'll need the city's services. We'll move along to 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 1, we have Confederation Heights. Confederation Heights is now just entering into secondary plan development and could be 2 to 3 years. And I've heard anywhere between 10 and 15,000 people will reside there. So this road is extremely important. Next slide, please. A more familiar context is a comprehensive planning zone. Minor corridor is what Riverside Drive is, and the implications of it are, we call it the purple zone. So commercial mix. Commercial mix is being introduced along the street, which we hopefully the street will be slowed down. So it is successful commercial. And the dotted line shows how this will progress, and the city will, this project will be the gateway for that. One thing of note is that the site number 5 that we're considering, the pink line is 1 kilometer in length, which makes it 15 minutes. The elevation increase from the base of this development is the height of Mooney's Bay Toboggan Hill. That is closed in the winter for safety reasons. So this could be an active transportation challenge going forward. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're very interested in the community is the density. And I always thought densification, intensification was two different terms, but here we're getting it together, density, intensity. These columns show existing densities that we have, and they attract challenges such as food scarcity. Affordability doesn't mean you don't qualify. So what happens is we hit, next slide, please. With the new developments coming on, you can see the red towers that have come in. Next slide, please. And as we pull into this, we see now in Riverside and River Ward, the height of density that is being planned. And Riley is very adamant that we keep the green space, we keep the parks, we keep the farm, we keep the Confederation grounds so that it maintains a regional beach area. And we also support that. One of the things that we're doing as far as investment is construction permits have been, commercial is only 14% over the last couple of years. 18% is what we contribute to property tax.
Mr. Coyle, you are out of time. And do you have a final slide that you want to do?
Final slide is we would recommend that the plan be updated, that it includes infrastructure to support active trips, that 50% of the services are zoned to accommodate, are accommodated on site. The commercial property rates being considered versus multi-tenant residential, and this would be declared a business improvement area. So what we're saying is that we need to support affordable housing with jobs. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I don't believe members have any questions for you. So thank you very much for the presentation today. Members, that is the public delegations that we have. I've left it to the applicant team now from Taggart and our consultants. And gentlemen, you know the drill. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of committee. How to adjust that. My name is Paul Black. I'm a principal planner at Foten Planning Design. I'm joined today in person by Jeff Parks, president at Taggart Realty Management, and joined online by Kyle Kazda, a development manager for Taggart Realty as well. I want to thank the Community Association for coming out, supporting the proposal before you today. But I do just want to clarify what the proposal is. So I want to be very clear. Residential uses are already permitted on this property. That is not the request that's before you today. The site has been previously zoned to permit high-rise residential in 2019, as was noted by Councillor Brockington. And the general mixed-use zone permits low-rise apartments, mid-rise apartments, stacked dwellings, and townhouses on the property as it exists today. The zoning bylaw amendment before you today is to seek permission to add additional unit types, being semi-detached and detached homes, to the mix of permitted residential uses on the property, and to refine the height schedule to better reflect the airport's federal zoning regulation. That is what's before you, not whether to permit residential uses or not. Residential uses are permitted on the site today. I want to be very clear on that. In terms of protections, we heard from the airport about provincial protections in the planning statement and federal protections. Federal protections are provided in part under the zoning regulation. As I mentioned, the height schedule has been crafted to respect in all respects the airport zoning regulation. The PPS speaks to protection of airports, as we've heard, and the city has interpreted that through the Schedule C14, the NEF lines, the NEP lines, the airport influence zone, the airport vicinity zone, and we have respected all policies respecting that, and those policies are set up to protect the economic viability of the airport. The city readopted those maps in 2021 as part of the official plan. To my knowledge, they weren't amended or sought to be amended by the airport at that time. In terms of the comments regarding economic district, I fully understand that there are studies going on around the economic district, but I do want to clarify that this site is not part of the airport's economic district. It is outside that boundary. We heard from the community association regarding tree protection, and I will just note that this site is also subject to or was subject to a draft plan of subdivision application, which has been approved, and we are now working through conditions on that draft plan. There are conditions there respecting trees and protection of those trees and the multi-use pathway connection between the two park blocks, and so we're happy to continue working with the community association through the subdivision process and through detailed design, as you've heard from the members of that association, as we go, and to ensure that the trees are protected to at least to every extent possible. The subdivision is not the topic of today, but just as in terms of an overview of what is being proposed, there is a 2.1 acre park expansion, which will allow Riverwood Park and the Uplands Riverside Park to be connected, where currently there is no connection between the two pieces. It will also provide lands to expand the park. There's also almost 5 acres of environmental protection lands along the river being added, in addition to the multi-use pathway between the two parks, as I've noted, setting up a multi-use pathway along the river to the south, which is per the official plan, and widening Riverside Drive to provide space for better active transportation connections there. As you've heard from the community, this intersection is very busy. We know that, and we know it's unlikely to ever get less busy. And so it's how do we design it to be better suited for the uses and the people traveling through it. And so we are providing space for that as part of the subdivision again, and the city has that on their radar to expand cycle lanes in this area to try and provide those active transportation connections. I think I'll leave it there. I wanted to address those points, but we're very happy to answer any further questions that members of committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Black, for coming down today and your delegation as well. And thank you for clarifying for committee members what is actually before us, what is already permitted. This is really a tweak in the grand scheme of things, and appreciate that. But I wanted to, same line of questioning I had for Mr. Takash, and that is just on the timelines. In particular, have you met with the airport since within the last 2 years? The concern that they've raised about proximity to the flight path and potential noise penetration to future residents. When have you met? Has this been raised? What types of discussions have you had?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'll ask maybe Mr. Kazda, who's online, if he is able to respond, and we can add to it if needed.
Thank you. So in terms of our consultation with the airport, we first sent notice to the airport authority in late 2022 with the draft plan of subdivision that we're proposing, which is very similar to what's before the committee today. And we then met with the airport authority in 2023, where we did hear from their concerns about noise exposure to the site. And we did review the plan policies in effect at the time and how the Schedule C14 came into being. We've since considered their concerns. We've ensured that through some of the conditions of draft approval, notices of the proximity and impact of airport noise is included in the purchase and sale agreements for any properties on the site, as well as any leases. So we hear that complaints are a concern for the airport, and we want to make sure that any future residents at the site are aware of potential impacts from living there. And then from then, we've received the airport's letters on the file, but haven't had much more correspondence.
Okay, I appreciate that. So has the development itself been modified in any way to respond to concerns raised by the airport? Either the configuration of buildings or how the buildings will be built? Is there anything you believe needed to be done in order to respect concerns that they've raised?
Part of the layout, thank you for the question, Councillor Brockington. Part of the layout of the site from the beginning did consider the potential for impacts from both airport noise and traffic from Hunt Club and Riverside. This has informed the massing of the towers along those two major streets, which from a minimum traffic noise perspective will shield the low-rise residential from that exposure. We've also been sure that the low-rise will follow the City of Ottawa's environmental noise control guidelines, which specify building materials that are to be used when buildings, low-rise buildings, are constructed in this airport vicinity development zone. So that includes like upgraded wall components, roof sheathing, and insulation, so that residents do have noise and decibel levels that are deemed to be comfortable and suitable long-term. We also will be undertaking site-specific noise studies for the 4 apartment blocks on the site, which will include on-site receptors, measuring aircraft noise, and then ensuring that those building components also will properly attenuate noise to ensure that the residents are comfortable. So I would say the massing is informed by some of the noise exposure as well as the constructability and materials of the buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Curry?
Yeah, just on that note, but so your thinking would be though that as long as residents don't open their windows or go outside, they would just be protected from the noise if they just stay inside.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. This area, from the noise information we have and the exposure data we have, suggests that residents will have fair enjoyment outside of their homes, and that long-term or more higher duration exposure, which will come, through the night, through the evening when residents are typically indoors, can be more adequately attenuated through the building components.
Yeah, just if the flight times just keep getting longer and longer as our airport gets busier and busier, it'll be daytime as well. And then of course you wouldn't want to keep your window open at night, I guess. But okay, I mean, people would know that ahead of time, so it'd be in their leases and they would know that. What do you think about the opportunity to have the big signs like they have in Mississauga?
Thank you, Councillor. I think we're open to reviewing with the city and the airport the applicability or the benefit of having those signs. Our position is that through the agreement of purchase and sale and the lease agreements, residents will be adequately notified, and it's our responsibility to ensure they're aware and that they understand the impacts of living in the subdivision and purchasing or renting there. We feel those are adequate protections for them, but we can consider and look at implementing some sort of signage to make sure that people are adequately notified.
Okay, and if you had complaints in future, how would you treat those? Would you simply say to the residents, you knew this beforehand, and so the complaints would not go any further than that?
Councillor, that's a good question. I mean, it depends on the ownership model. If the home is sold, I mean, the relationship doesn't continue to the same extent as if it's rented. But I think for a home for sale, they would be adequately informed, and it would be something that a purchaser would need to accept upon purchasing the home. And for a tenant, there'll be ways that they can, mitigate their own exposure to that noise through ensuring we have AC in unit, fresh air exchange, so that they don't necessarily need to open the windows to get that quality of living that would be expected anywhere in the city. So I think we would work with tenants in that regard.
Okay, just a couple other questions. Why do you think this has taken so long? The community was telling us that it had taken really a long time to get this going. What do you think has taken so long?
Thank you. The previous iterations of the development on the site were largely commercial, and they were dependent on leases and agreements for that commercial space, which over the last 25 years of ownership have came in varying forms and just haven't materialized to date. The site also has some complexities in terms of a bit of contamination of soil and slope management issues as we have significant grade change. And I feel like the current market for residential is able to manage the challenges of the site. And the group feels like this is the right type of development that's both wanted by the market and a good suit for the site and its constraints.
Alrighty, so if this is approved, when would it start being constructed, do you think?
Thank you. Our current estimate is that 2026 will be detailed design work, and either late 2026 or early 2027 construction and site servicing will begin. And then the first homes may be as early as the beginning of 2028.
Okay, one last question for now, because I have other questions for staff. But what have you ever offered to sell this piece of property to the airport?
When we met with the airport, we did have conversations, very, very preliminary, and made the offer that if they had some commercial interest in it, we could have those discussions.
All right. Okay. I have other questions for staff. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further questions from members. Thank you very much for the presentation and answering questions.
Thank you.
So we'll move into asking questions of staff. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the only question everyone's been saying is what will happen if we reject staff's recommendation? This goes to the tribunal on a success rate. I know you never can guarantee, but you always give us sage guidance on this.
Mr. Chair, I was not involved in the negotiations that took place in the first decade after amalgamation, but I was aware of detailed negotiations that were going on between staff, the home builders, and the Ottawa Airport Authority to arrive at the lines that came to be reflected in the Ottawa official plan. And it is my sense that a lot of thought went into those lines. Yes, time has passed since then, but I think there will be a heavy onus on someone who is challenging the conclusions that were arrived at through the process. I can't provide 100% certainty, but it is my reading of the Planning Act that notwithstanding the changes, the Airport Authority will have appeal rights. I would need to confirm that, but it looks to me that unlike most people, the Airport Authority would have appeal rights against the rezoning, but I think it's going to be a heavy onus on them to challenge residential use proposed on this property, Mr. Chair.
And I seem to concur on that. We're obviously in a housing crisis. There's a need for housing. We all know it. We all know there's no right to light. We've dealt with that in the past. This one here seems to be a very similar challenge. And as much as I think a lot of us would love just to reject it on principle, really at the end of the day, it is going to win. And on top of that, I think I've highlighted a couple of examples. If the federal government truly had interest in this, they could get involved. They could use that other fourth unelected body in the city, the NCC, if they wanted to get involved. There's lots of opportunities, and I haven't seen that from the federal government with a federal airport. So at this point, I'll be supporting the staff recommendation to avoid a costly delay, costly wait on building homes, and lack of representation from the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chair. It's not often that you have two such strong views, but I wanted to know what the chances were of the federal government being involved. It was talked about the economic zone. Is that possible that they could be involved? Further to what Councillor Tierney was asking.
Mr. Chair, I have been involved in at least 3 appeals dealing with concerns over airport noise and 1 property acquisition. 4160 Riverside was a property acquisition. And within those 4 matters, it has always been the airport authority that was involved. Transport Canada last was involved, to my knowledge, in a airport appeal in 1991, in January 1991, but that was before the downloading of airports to nonprofit entities. Since then, it's always been just the airport authority involved and not Transport Canada.
Okay, thank you. One of the issues that was brought up that in terms of the community association was all these paths that they're hoping to get active transportation. They kept talking about active transportation. Is this directly related to this development? Could this not be done otherwise? Because we do need those links for active transportation, and that seemed to be a big pull for them. But is it something that can be done otherwise?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. With this one, there are a few considerations with where the right of way is. So closer towards Hunt Club Drive, there is a significant grade change from Riverside Drive down to the property. So what we're looking at with this property is to add on to the embankment to provide that space for sidewalk and cycle track space for those connections. As well, within the OP, it talks about the multi-use pathway connection. And then so with this development, we're looking at that multi-use pathway connection going from Kimberwick Pond, where the stormwater management pond is, down to the site, and then eventually further south. So this development also considers the multi-use pathway connections that may eventually extend further from the site, but in the meantime, we'd be able to serve these residents too.
So those things would not, so we wouldn't get any connectivity without this development? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. And so with other considerations with this too is like there's currently the sidewalk along Riverside Drive is probably a little small, and so it's this development is helping to bring these upgrades to fruition.
What's different about this development is that when it comes to airport noise, usually it's existing communities and it's an expansion of the airport. So I think that was the case for the Billy Bishop and other. You've got maybe possible expansion of development, but it's pre-existing development that's there. And in this case, it's not there. And so it's the question is, why would they be putting it there if this is an issue? So I don't know if there's any other cases even similar to this. Another question for Mr. Mark.
The case that comes to my mind that was similar to this was the one I mentioned, 4160 Riverside, which was on the other side of Hunt Club, which has a history that goes back prior to my time with the region. It started around 85, 86. And they were able to achieve a exemption to the NEF lines. And then we had a hearing around 94. The end result of that one was that the region and the airport authority split the cost of acquiring the parcel. So that's how that one was ultimately disposed of, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll let my colleagues ask more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Lowe, you're next, and then Councillor Curry. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks very much, Chair. My question's actually about when I was reading the planning file, the impression I got is that we're looking to permit, other than the setbacks and I think one of the permitted uses, it looks like we're looking to permit a lower density, like the lower density portion of this development. Is that correct? Like the whole lot is zoned for something higher density, and we're just the applicant is looking for permission to build the lower density part as well. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. That was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe, Councillor Curry, and then Dudas. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. So just for staff, what authority does this committee have to make the request or force the request that those signs go up like they have in Mississauga?
Chair, we received the suggestion about the signage last night. We have had initial discussions with our traffic safety group in Public Works. They've indicated it would not be a traffic sign, that it would be akin to a business improvement or an advertising type sign. Ultimately, there's, I think further discussion that's needed. If the suggestion is that those signs go in the right of way, it is within council's purview to consider that, but I would suggest that further discussion with Public Works would be warranted.
So thank you. So, when the representative from Taggart was saying they would consider them, is it their final approval of them, or is it truly something that city council can mandate? If it's
through the subdivision, if it was something that the city thought was desirable, and I raise that as not a determined point yet, the city could impose that as a condition of the subdivision agreement to require the proponent to either install or to fund the cost of those signs.
Okay, that's good to know. So and then maybe this is to Mr. Mark, that the airport authority could appeal this. So if planning committee passes this, council passes this, the airport authority could appeal this, is what Mr. Mark said. Did I get that correct?
So when I was looking at the definition of specified persons in the Planning Act, Mr. Chair, it reads that it has to be in an airport authority under the Aeronautics Act. I have not looked, but I would be thinking that the Ottawa McDonald Cartier Airport Authority is such an airport authority that has an airport zoning regulation in place with respect to the land. I have not checked, but then that controls heights and so on within the authority's power. My guess is that there is such a federal zoning bylaw in place, but I have not checked. It is likely that they have appeal rights. I can't 100% state that as I sit here.
Okay, well, maybe we can find that out before council. I guess my main point, the number one thing that I would want to make sure of is that the airport is not prevented from having additional flights, newer flights, given the money that's going into defense spending right now, that this would impact some of the funding we might get, what we might be able to do at our airport. I just want to make sure this development doesn't cause a problem for the airport. Absolutely, we need more housing. Everybody knows that. But you don't want to have a housing development create this other problem that you don't even know you might have, because there haven't been maybe fulsome discussions and potentially not the full report from Bloomberg and our special economic zone staff, our economic development staff. So my question to staff is, how soon do you think, well, first of all, how involved was the airport authority and staff in talking about this development when they're talking about the special economic district requirements or future state?
Thanks, Chair. Well, certainly with this file, the plan of subdivision was referenced as well. So the subdivision and zoning bylaw applications were handled and circulated concurrently. The airport authority was circulated multiple times. I think the last one was the third formal circulation. And through the plan of subdivision, the airport authority requested and included conditions to be included in those conditions of draft approval. So the airport authority has been involved, but the economic zone was not brought up to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's significant work being done by Bloomberg and our special economic our economic development staff. Is there anyone there in the room there from strategic initiatives that could answer?
Chair, yes, I'm here. It's Debbie Stewart, GM of Strategic Initiatives. So Councillor, through the chair, Councillor, the work in terms of the action plan that would be developed in conjunction with Bloomberg has not yet commenced. So we're planning that work for later in the year. It would follow a similar process as to the process currently underway with Canada North Tech Park. So to answer your question more directly, there have not yet been discussions with the airport authority with regards to that work.
I'm starting to see part of the problem here, maybe. Okay. Well, what if we deferred this until there was further thought, just as an idea, what would happen then?
Chair, I mean, if there was a motion to defer, I would highlight that we are well beyond the timeline where the applicant could appeal for non-decision. That's no guarantee that they in fact would, but they are within their rights to do so. With respect to waiting for the work on the special economic zone to continue, I don't know myself, and maybe Ms. Stewart could speak to that about the timelines about when that work might be completed.
That work would begin sometime in the fall, and it would take approximately 4 to 6 months to complete.
Okay, good to know. My last question is simply getting back to who would have the authority if there were complaints made by community members in future to say, you know, it's too loud, we want the flight paths changed, we want the frequency, the hours, something like that changed because it's too loud. How would that process work? Do we fully understand that, where those complaints would go? Who would have the authority to direct the airport authority to make a bunch of changes that they really, truly right now do not want to make?
Chair, the city does not regulate the operations of the airport and their hours that they operate. It would, I'm assuming, either fall to the Transport Canada or Airport Authority.
So community members would have to complain to Transport Canada, and then Transport Canada would have some authority to make those changes or direct that.
Respectfully, Chair, I'm not certain about the federal aviation rules. I would assume it's one of those two bodies, either the Airport Authority themselves or Transport Canada.
Okay. I don't know. I would like to ask the councillor from the area if he's willing to amend this motion to add in that they would, you know, where signs are possible, appropriate in the right of way, that they be put up similar to the ones in Mississauga. I don't know if the councillor's already contemplating that.
I'm sorry, Councillor Curry. Councillor Brockington is momentarily away from the seat.
Okay, well, maybe we can wait.
Oh,
Councillor
he's, and did you hear it? Oh, you're best. Bear with us just a moment.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. I think that the best course of action today is simply to, and given that staff received the request for the signage yesterday, leave it with staff and myself to have a discussion, and we can come back to council potentially with something.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Dudas.
Thank you. So I have a question. So about 15 years ago, when the map was drawn and the lines were laid out, and I'm not sure that any of you were here at this time or have recollection of this, but I'm asking you to maybe use the hive mind here for this. Was the frequency of flights over this particular area, the activity at the airport, less than what we see today?
Chair, it would be speculation on our part, but I think it is fair to say that over time, there have been increases in flight traffic as the city has continued to grow.
Okay. And over time, you know, once again, there was the mention of several dates, several milestones in this particular file. Was there ever thought given by staff that this might be too close to the end of the runway and that this would have an impact on the quality of life for residents who are moving into this space?
Thank you, Chair. For instance, the land use restriction map for the noise, that does include a forecast to 2043. So it does include growth in that map. When we're looking at the map, we're basing our decisions on the policy that's embedded in the official plan. So it speaks to thresholds of noise and where those restrictions would be. And in this case, this location is located where residential development can proceed.
Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui te remplace ou tu restes toute la journée? Non, non, je reste là. OK. Alors,
Mais là,
Marcelo va finir.
lui, ben, il faut que ça en aille à 12:30, là.
Exactement, c'est ce qu'il vient de me dire.
Moi, je reprends.
Je reprends, puis moi,
Faudrait que quelqu'un vienne à 1h.
Nick vient me remplacer 1h, puis moi, j'arrive. C'est moi qui viens
Oh,
remplacer
ouais.
Marcelo.
Okay, okay.
Keep their windows closed, have inside air conditioners. There was a series of different factors that they were going to be including. Is that something that the city has ever seen in any other development? Have we also built near high noise industry or any other kind of spaces where we required a development to have these kind of features?
Yes, thanks again. Noise, conditions for noise items on title, it's not terribly uncommon. And even locations close to busy streets may require conditions on title.
Okay.
Chair, just to add to that, large areas in Barhaven and Riverside South currently are under the flat pass of the airport. And all those residential developments were reviewed and approved and with noise warning clauses on title in addition to building components requirement. So for this development, the similar was applied.
Okay. And I know this question was asked slightly in a different way, and you may not have a different answer, but I'm specifically asking about curfews, and it might be with Transport Canada. If a curfew were to ever be imposed upon the airport, is that something that funnels its way at all through the municipality, or is it simply through the federal government? Once again, I don't know if you do have that answer, but I am curious.
The city does not regulate the operations and hours of the airport.
Okay, so it's solely with the feds. I have to be honest, I'm struggling with this a lot. I understand that legally it doesn't make sense for us to say no. From a housing perspective, I know it doesn't make sense for us to say no. I understand that this has been a long time coming, and it sounds, and frankly, I know we still have the airport authority here, that there should have been a lot more engagement by them in this file much earlier on, and maybe we wouldn't be in this position today. My concern is for the folks who are moving in here in the future. All I can think about was, sure, they're going to sign a lease, they're going to sign documents, buy these places, they're going to move in, and maybe for the first couple of years, it's going to be fine. But 80 flights a day and night, turn into 90, turn into 100. They can't open their windows, they're outside, they're hearing it constantly. We don't want to impose a curfew or any restrictions on the airport because they are such a huge economic booster for our city. And these residents are going to have to live with that. They then sell, they move to somewhere else, someone else moves in. They think they sign a contract, they may have received the same information. The developers have moved on. Now they've, it's a couple generations through this. And all of a sudden, whoever is the elected official of the day is getting bombarded by requests to impose restrictions on our airport because people are living too close to the end of a runway. I get it. It doesn't make any sense for me to say no. I am going to be voting against this. I just can't in good conscience say that this makes sense. So I appreciate the information. I can't support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just a few comments from myself. So in March 2019, the community opposed the application before us. Today, they support it, including myself. In addition to the zoning amendment that's before us, this project will yield retention of 5 acres of environmentally protected lands abutting the river that will be held in public hands. There's an abutting park called Riverside Uplands Park, which, believe it or not, has no access. Despite it being on Riverside, there's going to be a parking lot build. Right now, the abutting residential community is infiltrated with parked cars. We've heard there will be a new intersection, upgrades, bike infrastructure, sidewalk infrastructure as a result that will not yield if this doesn't go forward, and a new MUP connecting this subdivision with the neighboring subdivision through Riverward Park along the river. So very nice. And appreciate the residential blend that we're seeing here, not just one unit type. So you've heard from the community their concerns about the safety and protection of critical trees in the area. You've heard the request and the need for affordable housing units. Even a push, Mr. Chair, a community association asking for greater density. Usually we hear the opposite. And of course, the big one, the intersection with the transportation and traffic challenges, which was a major issue in 2019, still is. But here's an intersection that really has not seen significant improvements from the city for flow, and something I'll follow up with at council, but in the interest of time today, I want to keep my comments short. The airport is raising the absolute worst case scenario with us in order to vote against this. And I think that in addition to the fact that this application follows all provincial and federal regulations, it's not asking for any type of variance from that prospective tenants or owners will be warned about their proximity to the airport. Overall, I support this application. Whether the airport came to us today or 2 years ago doesn't change my decision on this or my outcome on this. 660 units will be built in a city that has declared a housing and homelessness emergency. And there are many other egregious cases where council has approved zoning. This isn't even close to the top. This is a reasonable location in a neighborhood that has its arms opened to potential new residents. So, Chair, in the interest of brevity, I will be supporting this, and I'll have more to say at council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. I'm going to keep it brief as well. This is a rezoning application to rezone from a development that has very significant residential development to another proposal that has significant residential development. It is incumbent upon us, I believe, to approve this, and I do not believe that we would stand a chance in front of the Ontario Land Tribunal if we were to refuse it, and you all know how I feel about bringing things that don't stand a chance to the Ontario Land Tribunal. So with that, I don't believe we have any motions or directions or anything, Kelly. It's just the report recommendations. We'll get a recorded vote, please.
Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Curry?
No.
Councillor Dudas?
No.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Councillor Kitts?
Yes.
Councillor Lowe?
No.
Councillor Tierney?
Yes.
Councillor Troster?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gower, Chair Leeper?
Yes.
8 yeas, 3 nays.
8 pour, 3 contre. Alors, c'est adopté. Merci beaucoup. Alors, il nous reste un point. Je tiens à souligner que la nouvelle membre du Conseil, Isabelle Glosky, est avec nous. Bienvenue. Êtes-vous toujours conseillère désignée pour quelques heures encore, en effet? Très heureux de vous voir ici. Alors, maintenant, nous avons le rapport sur la surveillance du plan officiel et le rapport annuel de l'aménagement. À 13 heures, nous avons une autre réunion. Je pense que les membres aimeraient prendre une pause. Alors, si vous pouvez prendre des raccourcis. Merci. Je suis accompagnée par Maria Hernandez.
Policy and Community Planning, and she's going to be pleased to take us through the results of her official plan monitoring and annual development report for 2023.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee
Bonjour,
members.
Monsieur le Président, membres du comité. Je m'appelle Maddie. Je vais revoir avec vous la mise à jour du rapport de surveillance du plan officiel. Alors, comme contexte, ici, le plan officiel consigne de surveiller continuellement l'efficacité des politiques de ce plan pour savoir si la ville est sur la bonne voie au regard de ses orientations et objectifs stratégiques. Le rapport sur le rendement permettra de suivre nos progrès réalisés dans l'atteinte des objectifs du plan officiel. Alors, les aspects gestion de croissance sont inclus là-dedans et complètent aussi. Nous allons continuer de faire des mises à jour sur autres données économiques pour Ottawa qui ne s'appliquent pas nécessairement aux objectifs du plan officiel, mais qui donnent quand même un contexte économique. Alors, cette dernière mise à jour comprend les faits des consultations externes qui ont été faites auprès des associations communautaires, des conseils scolaires, des établissements d'enseignement postsecondaire. Les consultations reposaient sur le rapport référentiel provisoire de 2022. Il a contribué à déterminer les lacunes dans les données ainsi que les sources d'informations éventuelles. Et d'autres commentaires ont été mieux pris en compte dans le cadre de l'examen du plan officiel et d'un autre rapport de la Ville d'Ottawa. C'était un objectif général du plan officiel. On a déterminé que ces éléments seraient mieux abordés lors de l'examen du plan officiel ou dans un autre rapport de la Ville d'Ottawa, comme un rapport de développement annuel. Le contrôle fait aussi l'objet de rapports annuels en fonction d'indicateurs particuliers et des suggestions qui ont été faites lors de consultations. Alors, le rapport est structuré selon 5 grands changements apportés aux politiques: la gestion de la croissance, le développement économique, la mobilité, l'esthétique urbaine et communautaire, ainsi que le climat, l'énergie et la santé publique. Les critères des indicateurs de données peuvent servir à mesurer une ou plusieurs politiques du plan officiel, donnent facilement accès à des statistiques et 17 des indicateurs de données ont été mis à jour ou révisés. Donc, 2 nouveaux indicateurs par modal et bornes de rechange des véhicules électriques. Une ligne de base des données a été établie. Alors, comme on l'a dit déjà, un rapport de rendement est inclus au début du rapport et sera disponible sur ottawa.ca pour résumer la situation de l'heure. On y trouve aussi des données qui ont été mises à jour dernièrement. Donc, dans les indicateurs à jour, 9 ont dépassé les objectifs du plan. 3 ont démontré que des progrès avaient été faits, mais ne répondent pas encore aux objectifs fixés. Et l'un indique qu'aucun progrès n'a été fait. Mais nous n'avions pas assez d'informations sur les parts modales. Quelques indicateurs de gestion de la croissance. Le taux de densification, c'est la partie des nouvelles constructions. Et le taux de densification dépasse les 45 et on a réalisé 74 du taux visé en 2023. 8 étaient des constructions au sol et un autre.
Despite more units in the urban built-up area generally. Next slide, please. So as of July 1st, 2023, the greenfield land supply of 1,358 hectares is consistent with the provincial planning statement's requirements regarding minimum residential land supply. The supply spans various stages of development, from secondary plans and applications to registered parcels.
And of the total supply, 646 hectares is vacant land that is registered or draft approved, providing service land sufficient for over 7 years. Furthermore, as of year-end 2024, 594 hectares of the 641 council adopted expansion lands has started the secondary planning process, which brings the current total supply of designated and available land for residential development to 1,952 hectares, or about 24 years. Next slide, please. To accommodate Ottawa's projected job growth to 2046 in accordance with the provincial policy statement, between 275 and 387 net hectares of industrial and logistics land are needed, and the mid-2023 supply estimate of 461 net hectares shows that the city currently exceeds this requirement. And next slide, you can skip the next 2 slides. Yep, there. So to help reduce, or sorry, I lost my slide. So as mentioned earlier, the annual development report provides an update on other development and economic indicators that are not directly related to official plan policies and objectives. It monitors population, employment change, as well as housing, office, industrial, and retail development, and provides information on the Quebec part of the Ottawa-Gatineau Census Metropolitan Area and the Greater Ottawa-Gatineau Area, where possible, to provide a complete overview of the region. Next slide, please. So to just quickly go over a few of the annual development report highlights. The estimated population for the city of Ottawa increased to 1,083,550 by year-end 2023. Net migration to Ottawa, the Ottawa-Gatineau CMA, increased 52.8% between 2022 to 2023. However, housing starts were down 14.3% from 2022, with 8,632 new starts, 66.4% of which were apartments. Next slide, please. So in terms of employment, all employment clusters experienced growth in 2023, with the industrial and resource cluster leading with 12,500 new jobs. The knowledge cluster had the largest employment numbers with 192,600 employed in 2023. However, Ottawa's office vacancy rate increased from 11.2% to 12.2%. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. So in summary, staff's recommendation is that the committee receive both reports for information. The official plan is still performing well when it comes to economic development and mobility indicators, as well as aspects of growth management related to intensification and land supply. And the annual development report shows an increase in population, migration, and employment growth. However, there has been a slowdown in new housing construction and an increase in office vacancies. So in terms of next steps, staff will continue to monitor and update both reports annually. We will review and refine official plan indicators and add information to the annual development report where appropriate. And we will continue external engagement and consider feedback within future report updates. So that's the end of the presentation, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harriman Fernandez. We do have one public delegation. Elizabeth McAllister is online to speak. And I just want to let members know while we're promoting her into the room, we are going to take a minimum break. So just given how this item is moving, we're going to start the joint PHC ARAC meeting at 1:15. Good afternoon, Ms. McAllister. Whenever you're here, feel free. You've got 5 minutes to give us a presentation. And Elizabeth, my understanding is you're muted.
Yeah, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth McAllister. I am a board member of the Federation of Citizens Associations, FCA. Just to give you a bit of my background, I have been one or two from the top in both the federal government and in the World Bank. In several of my portfolios, I have been responsible for implementing a results orientation to how the institutions I work for operated. I have consulted for the the European Commission, 5 UN organizations, the International Red Cross, and many other organizations since retirement. I have worked most only with senior management teams. So that's my credentials for having an opinion. We welcome the progress that has been made over the last year by the city in moving more towards an evidence-based approach to management and reporting. However, we have concerns, as I know many of you do as well. The 2 reports that have been looked at in the last 2 weeks, including the today in the city strategy report, should be tools for you as counselors and levers for accountability. They should help you assess whether policies and programs are delivering on the outcomes that you have prioritized in your key strategic documents. Unfortunately, the picture painted in the report is one of activity, not impact, or one that is not quite in line with a full picture of this current situation. With more than 94 goals across the strategic and official plans and 15 other municipal strategies, each with their own broad objectives, there is a real risk of strategic fragmentation. Could you put slide 4 up, please, while I speak? Thank you. This is not solely a staff issue. Rather, it highlights the need for council to revisit how it defines priorities. We urge you to consider the basic principles of results-based strategy management. It is much more than monitoring and evaluation. Particularly, we urge you to look at outcomes-based accountability. Prime Minister Carney, in implementing an outcomes-based planning and reporting system, has appointed a subcommittee of cabinet to be defining and offering measures for outcomes of the key priorities that the Prime Minister is trying to achieve. Were the city to follow suit, we could expect better opportunities to get necessary funding and partnership support from the federal government for municipal programs and projects. More importantly, almost, it would also build a base for reaping the benefits of artificial intelligence. Too often, performance reports, slide 10, please. Too often, performance reports on outputs within staff control, such as reports, I'm sorry, this is not what I expected, sorry. Too often the reports are focused on matters that don't refer to real life changes. For example, when asked about revitalization of the Byward Market or implementation of the 15-minute neighborhoods, staff often reply that involvement of external partners is a reason for not measuring outcomes. But meaningful change in a city, in a country, in a family always involves partnerships. Leadership means setting shared targets, clarifying success, and always ensuring that stakeholders are aligned with desired outcome and are doing their bit to report on their contribution to the high-level outcome. Measuring the impact of public sector interventions with partners and communities allows real-time adaptation based on lessons of implementation. What's worked, what hasn't? Slide 10, please. If the city isn't clearly defining success and tracking progress towards it, we cannot be claimed to be accountable to the people we serve. We urge council to reaffirm its leadership role by requiring rigorous outcomes-based reporting tied to council-approved projects. limiting the number of strategic priorities that focus on outcomes, which frankly will lead you to most of your other wishes as well, is what truly matters. Empowering staff to lead partnerships that deliver real results, improving quality of life, economic vitality, and environmental stability, sustainability is crucial. This opportunity to embed a culture-based results-driven public value creation and to restore meaningful transparency is important. It's important.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, you're out of time.
Oh,
do you have
okay.
a final concluding thought?
Yes, I will just in conclusion tell you that at the bottom there, that the PowerPoint includes provincial examples of outcomes-based management in the college example, but also one slide that is worth about $30,000 in consulting time that looks at mobility in terms of outcomes as stated in the official plan and what those outcomes would look like and what the measures are taken from the World Bank, other cities, and international practice. And I hope this will help you to try to get a clear vision of a possible future.
We'll make sure that your deck is circulated to members of council. I appreciate the intervention. Councillor King has a question for you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I really wanted to thank Ms. McAllister for her presentation around different strategies around growth. I was just wondering if you could elaborate around outcomes, especially around some of our planning initiatives at the city. I know we've had discussions about different factors to determine success. So I was just wondering if you could briefly elaborate on that.
Yes, I can. So let me give you, I could give 3 examples. I'll do my best to give you fewer. One is an example of the housing metrics, which we have, which look at new affordable housing from one year to the next. That's not an outcome, particularly because, well, for one thing, 31 affordable units are lost for every new unit that is developed in the city, according to Steve Palmer, a research professor at Carleton University. So 31 to 1. So even if we're creating a few hundred, we're losing hundreds more. So what do we really want to know? We want to know the percentage of people that are on lists now who actually get into affordable housing and are happy with the safety of the housing. That would be an outcome. Another example would be the safety. This is a mobility example, and we're looking at reduction of fatalities and serious injuries. This is almost at the outcome level. But when we see what the indicators are, they're very narrow to pop-outs and 2 safety measures. When the Road Authority in New Zealand was asked to adopt this outcome, the Road Authority said it's not our responsibility. We are in charge of transportation. The outcomes-based cabinet said, if not you, who? By the end of the process, it wasn't Sweden, it was New Zealand that started an outcomes-based approach based on rigorous analysis of what causes and what prevents these outcomes. And what I found most interesting is that the highest level outcome was actually the reduction in social costs because of the reduction in traffic safety and injuries. So how much did the city, the province, the country save from hospitalizations, from expensive rehab, from lost income taxes that came from death of a family member?
If I may, Elizabeth, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of particular measures. I think the point has been made that, you know, there is a high level issue that you see with our data collection and using that to drive decision making. But if we can keep it sort of at a high level, that would be great.
Okay, so I would just say that in my experience, working extensively in this area, there are pitfalls, and I'd be happy to share those with anyone anytime. But also the transformative effects have been enormous. The World Bank adopted the New Zealand approach, and there have been tens of thousands of lives throughout the world that have been saved because of a more systemic approach to achieving an outcome.
I appreciate that answer, and I think it's really a focus on the idea that you know, we have to think more holistically around growth and the way that departments interact, and also in terms of outcomes. So I really do appreciate the fact that the FCA is looking at this and is providing, I think, some quality recommendations to city staff. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. So the opportunity is now to ask questions of staff with respect to anything that you read in either of the two reports. And I don't, oh, sorry, Councillor Curry.
Chair, I think Councillor Kitts was ahead of me, but I don't know what's happened here. But, you know, we took our hands down there, but I just didn't want to go ahead. But I did want to say that, you know, if you equate what we're looking at here in terms of a report on our official plan to a strategic plan update for a company, this is the kind of report that companies would spend a full hour looking at. If you look at even just the chart of the yellow, green, and red, I mean, we should be asking questions like, why do we have 2 yellow dots as opposed to 3 yellow dots? Why is it that some of these categories, affordable housing, vacant dwellings, have the empty dots with not enough information to assess performance at this time? One of them is vacant dwellings, not enough data or information to assess at this time. Affordable housing, not enough information to assess performance at this time. I mean, each one of these is worth a lengthy discussion to ask staff why is not everything here all green? And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying that this report, I appreciate we've got to get to the next meeting and that, you know, there's a goal to get there at 1:15. But this is the type of report that we should be spending a lot of time on. So, I mean, I guess I have a couple of questions for staff that I would start with is, what would it take for us to get recent data in the first place? Because some of this is 2023, some of it at best December 2024. But what would it actually take for us to get, you know, data as of yesterday?
So Chair, just in terms of the question on the data that's missing, the short answer is the data literally does not exist for the affordability. In order to determine affordability, we need to know price points for permits or starts that have gone forward. And that information is not shared with any agency or any level of government.
So what would it take to get them to share it? Like what I'm asking for, what would it take for us to get this data tomorrow? If someone told you had to get it, what would that take?
So Chair, to some extent, it may require, if it's a mandatory, it may require legislation to enforce that, or it could be voluntary. I recall in the past, CMHC had a voluntary survey where they had asked builders to provide the price points, and that gave some indication, but oftentimes for the lower price points, there was not simply enough data, and so that data wasn't available. So again, it really depends on, you know, how the nature of the mandatory versus voluntary, and then whether that information will be coming forward.
And,
okay, is there any plan to try to change that legislation or ask for voluntary information?
Through you, Chair, we are hoping to be able to include more information on the private dwelling side of things in the upcoming 2024 report through city initiatives like the CIP program, where we're better able to track private affordable units that enter into agreements with the city. My colleague Justin is present today and might be able to speak more to that program if you had further questions about that. But we're hoping to be able to provide a better picture of affordable units in the next update.
Okay, well, I'm happy to wait for the next update. Just would say, like, as an overall theme, whether it's from our Auditor General or what we talk about generally at committee, it's the data we have is improving, but it still needs to improve quite a lot more. So just a specific question on vacant dwellings. Can you help me understand how there would be not enough information to assess performance when we have the vacant unit tax? And I thought we had a lot more information now.
Yeah, so the vacant unit tax, sorry, through you, Chair, the vacant unit tax has, they published the report last fall. So we do have the baseline data. And so the reason why we haven't assigned a performance grade to that data yet is because it's just a baseline. So once we have next year's data, we'll be able to assess performance. And that's the case for a few of those indicators like mode share and blanking on some of the other ones, but yes, it's largely due to the fact that it's just baseline data at the moment.
And the same then is for EV chargers. That's the other one with no data.
That's correct. That's correct. It's baseline data at this time.
Okay, I guess one of the things I would say is that the delegation referred to outcomes. You know, in education, all of our determination is based on outcome measurements. You know, I'm glad to see that, you know, Prime Minister Carney's moving in the same direction. When you heard that delegation, what were some of your thoughts on outcome-based measurements and decision making?
Through you, Chair, I think if we had the resources and time to be able to collect that kind of data, it's something we could incorporate within the report. It's just at this time, we're working with the data that it's currently available, and we're also looking to measure the policies as currently written in the report, or sorry, as currently written in the official plan. And so at this time, we're working within, you know, with restraints. Thank you.
I think it would, thank you for that. I think it would be helpful for council to understand what those restraints are, because if it means that council maybe needs to give direction and funding or whatever that would mean, I'm not sure exactly what it would look like, but outcome based measurements are much better to the delegation's point. And maybe council needs to give the direction as to what outcomes we're looking for. Maybe we haven't had that discussion and given that clear direction, but I agree fully with what the delegation had to say, Elizabeth. That was very helpful. I don't know that, you know, we're rushed to get to another meeting, but that's what I'm saying. This report here needs a lot more time to talk about. The other question I would just have is on the 24-year recommendation or calculation of how much land we have. The province is going to come out with new numbers. Is there any indication that we would know how that would be recalculated and how much it might change?
So Chair, that is the second item on today's joint Planning and Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee, where we're going to be beginning the update of our growth projections, and staff can walk through what that process looks like in order to get an understanding of what that demand would be and how our existing supply meets that demand.
Okay, that's right. It is on that as well. Okay, all right. That's enough for me, I guess, but I really actually have a lot more questions.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. I know a number of councillors have sort of similar concerns about the way in which we use the data and the data that we have, and whether we're measuring the right things and how we're making decisions based on the data we have. Today, we're just receiving the report, but I think there's the possibility of a much richer conversation to come. Who's next? Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to prolong, but I can't help but notice about affordable housing, and I want to know what we need to get more information on that and to improve things, because that is a concern. It looks like we just don't have the capacity yet to monitor it, as well as ground level housing. But it's obvious to all of us when we hear about people looking for housing right now. It's just not there. And I don't know what we can do as a city to improve that. And is this what this is about, to look at those next steps? Because for for families. Family housing is the big missing middle. Developers want to make apartments. They're charging ahead with apartments. They get approved for apartments. They don't necessarily build them, but they get approved for them. I've got lots of examples. So is this what this is about, to see how we can strategize to tackle these issues?
Through you, Chair, we did consult with Steve Pomeroy, who's a professor at Carleton University, I believe, and he suggested reaching out to the CMHC to get data on affordable housing, and so we followed up on that recommendation, and unfortunately, the data at the citywide level or for affordable housing is suppressed, given the number of units that would fall under each affordability category. But my colleague, Justin, might be able to speak to some city programs that might be able to fill in gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee. Yeah, just to add to what Maddie was saying, we are, or there will be a launch of the annual progress report, the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. So any update on recent data from 2024 will be available. I believe it's launching June 24th. So that's incoming to give you more recent. But apart from that, in terms of tracking any of the affordable units, it's really those that are in agreement with the city and the strategic housing projects branch, where we're able to kind of track new units that come through, new building permits, and as Maddie had kind of mentioned as well, for the private sector, we have our CIP units that were approved in December of 2024. So those, if they receive building permits, will be reflected in next year's OP monitoring report. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. And also on family housing, that is more than 2-bedroom units. I think if I don't want to get specific about ground units necessarily, but bigger than 2 bedrooms, that's basically for families. And the absolute shortage of that, and the reluctance for developers to go into that market because it costs more. And I'm wondering if we're looking at ways to encourage that.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we also look to try to include or incentivize that larger unit sizes are included, and an example would be the CIP as well. I think there's a requirement for 15% of those looking to benefit from those grants be larger bedroom or larger unit sizes. But yeah, it is something that we keep in mind and that we look to evaluate and continue to strive towards when we're looking to find new nonprofit or affordable housing projects.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions of staff. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Maddie. That was great. So that is this report received? Thank you. All right, let's wrap this meeting up. We have no in-camera items. 511, really? Oh, sorry. So on 510 and 511, right? We've just received the official plan monitoring. Is the annual development report received as well? Thanks. Those were combined, so I kind of lost track. Are there any notices of motion? I don't see any. Perfect. Councillor Hill's is Councillor Logan going to do that? Sorry? Councillor Curry. Councillor Curry, did you have a inquiry that you wanted to put on behalf of Councillor Hill?
I do. I was thinking it was for next meeting, but yes, I have it here. Okay. On June 14th, want me to start reading? Oh yeah, 2023 City Council adopted the Provincial Bill 109 requirement that all development applications must receive a decision within 60 or 90 days of receipt, and created a pre-consultation period where staff would ensure that plans and studies were completed in accordance with the terms of reference consistent with one another, and that they addressed any known issues identified by staff before the 60 to 90 day period began. On June 6, 2024, Ontario Bill 185 received royal assent, which removed the ability for municipalities to require pre-consultation. In September 2024, the city reviewed the impacts of this change and required adjustments to the planning process, including moving the initial step of deeming an application complete to being within the application timeline. Accordingly, the city set new review targets of 90 days for individual site plan applications and 120 days for zoning applications. With that in mind, can staff please review the following? On average, how many development applications does a typical planning employee have responsibility for at any one time, including pre-submissions? Number two, since council implemented a 90-day window to review individual site plan applications and a 120-day window to review zoning applications in September 2024, what percentage of applications have been approved within the new approval targets of 92 or 120 days? Number three, since adopting the new process, on average, how many days does the city require to deem an application complete? Please include in the average any projects that were initially deemed incomplete and then reworked to be deemed complete. Number four, in 2024, what was the average time between the first pre-consultation submission date of an application and the final approval date of a project? How does that time compare to the city's prior process? Has that time improved in 2025 so far? Number five, what percentage of applications have been deemed incomplete after the initial submission? Number six, what are the most common reasons a project may be deemed incomplete? Number seven, in 2024, what was the average number of resubmissions as part of the pre-consultation process for individual site plan applications and zoning bylaw applications, respectively?
Amazing. I'm looking forward to receiving the results of that inquiry. I think some of those have been answered before on the record, but some of it has not, and that'll be some useful data for us. So thank you very much to Councillor Hill, wherever you are, for that. We have no other business. We are adjourned until our next meeting, Wednesday, July 16th. Yeah, but now we're going to have a joint Planning and Housing Committee with Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. I did promise members of this committee a break. We're going to take until 1:30 to do that meeting. Thank you.